Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Genos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Niblink. I'm the creator of Apples and Genos, originator of the Zero G Draft Strategy. In this podcast, Blake and I are going to review all of the biggest trades and signings of the last week for fantasy purposes. Let's get it. And of course, I have your friend and my best friend. It's Blake Creamer. Blake, how are we feeling tonight?
Always good to see you, my man. It gives me a feeling inside my stomach I can't describe, and I don't want to. All right, that's just for me and you, buddy. But oh God, I'm sorry. What a day, crazy day. I mean, I always forget. Compare this frenzy to the last frenzy. I don't know. Was it a frenzy? Was anyone foaming at the mouth, Nate? I felt like more teams were like just re-signing their free agents and then calling it a day. I don't know. What was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday felt almost as crazy, quote unquote, as today, with all the signings, people staying, the Marner sign and trade, all this kind of news coming through. So, yeah, I think a lot of the big names obviously came off before the actual deadline came through, which, I mean, to some extent, I think that happens every year, but it did really feel like that was accentuated this time around. And yeah, in the end, you got a lot of the top end guys staying in the same places. So we'll get into all that for sure. Anybody joining us here, throw your questions in the comments and we will get into it. Let's start it off there, Blake. We got a question already. Sam King's in here. Need to pick 4 to keep in fantasy for next season. My choices are Boldy, Darlene, Tage Thompson, Kyle Connor, Natchez, J-Rob, or Tavares. Who should I pick? That is a difficult question. So Darlene and Tage for sure for me. Um, I think I would go Connor and J Rob. Boldy is interesting. Natchez is interesting, but I think I would go Darlene, Tage, Kyle Connor, J Rob. Final answer. You, Blake?
You're just leaving Natchez out in the cold. You son of a gun. You you got to go Boldy, Darlene, Tage, and J Rob. Probably J Rob. Is that what you said? Are we in some
I put
numbers?
Connor in there, but
Get Connor the hell out of my sight. All right, we got Boldy over here. All right, actually, I love Kyle Connor. He's great.
All right, we got another one. Matt says 2 questions. Where do we think Marner and Eichel go in keeper league drafts? Also, have you guys been keeping up with the off-season stream crossing? Not nearly enough is what I would say. I think I've been feeling the lack. I just don't feel as connected somehow.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way, Blake?
I'm backed up, buddy. I'll tell you that right now. You ever held a pee in for so long that it just went away? Has that ever happened to you, Nate? Like, where does it go? Actually, I did that one time on a bus. I was like, I couldn't get out. I'm like, I got to hold this. And then, yeah, when I went to go pee, it literally took me 15 minutes. So that's the situation I'm in right now, buddy. It's going to be an explosion, just a bond that can never be broken. As long as we're near a body of water, I think we'll be fine. But yeah, I'm missing it, buddy.
Absolutely. As for the question here about Marner and Eichel in keeper league drafts, I think they're both like probably going to be in the 1-2 turn area, probably early second round, most likely. But I think that's where I see it in most drafts. How do you see it, Blake?
Yeah, similar. It's going to be weird to see Eichel there, but I think he absolutely deserves to be there. And now you got Marner there. Like, it's going to be interesting. And we'll talk about Marner in a little bit, but where does he play? Where does he play? Which line? It's going to be a kind of a neat piece there.
For sure. Sim says, thanks. Keep up the best fantasy content around. Appreciate that.
Amazing
Mike's in here. Michelli ceiling with Matthews. That is the question. I put it out on Twitter, and we'll get into it. We got a slide for this made up and everything, but I put it out there on Twitter that you don't go out and acquire Matthias Michelli to play on the third line. You acquire him to play him with Matthews and Nyes on the top line. That's my take, and I'm sticking to it. Do you see it any different, Blake?
No, yeah, and again, we'll talk about Michelli in a little bit, but that makes total sense. He's a low-key Marner replacement. And then the problem is he doesn't have power play, and we've seen that show before, right? So it's going to cap his ceiling, but we'll get into that.
All right. Well, why don't we get into it? Let's start it off on this massive slide deck that we've assembled. Starting it off with Noah Dobson going to Montreal. We haven't had a chance to talk about this yet. Dobson signs 8 years, 9.5 million sign and trade to Montreal there. And immediately what I was thinking about is what does the Montreal power play one look like next year? You already have Lane Hudson there, who obviously kind of revitalized that power play all on his own last
Yep.
year. Terrific young player. I can't see any situation in which he's not yet again kind of the centerpiece of that power play up top and letting things run through him. And so, how does Dobson fit into that? You have a lot of players now on the Canadians who can fit in a top power play role. You have Slavkovsky net front, you have Caulfield on the one half wall, you have Suzuki on the other. And then what are you doing with Ivan Demidov coming in next year full time? Patrick Laine, the only reason to dress Patrick Laine is to have him on the power play, it feels like. So, yeah, what do you think they do with the top power play, Blake?
I don't know. When I dig in on Dobson a little bit, I feel like we've seen kind of the goalposts for him, right? He had a 70-point season, but last year, in honestly similar conditions, it wasn't that different. He only had 39 points, right? And his power play performance was cut in half, but he had the same amount of power play time, basically. So I really feel like this is kind of, I'm going to use this as an example. I don't think these are comparable to these players, but like Cale Makar, Devin Taves, kind of, right? You got a 1-2. You got Lane Hudson running power play one. He's still going to get the 20-minute treatment. And then you got Dobby. Master has given Dobby a sock. Yeah, Montreal gave Dobby a sock, all right, full of cash. Yeah, but I mean, this he's amazing. This is a great trade in real life. Obviously, their defensive depth is going off the rails here. But yeah, I really do see Dobson as a power play 2 performer, probably him and Mike Matheson on power play 2. Because yeah, like you said, you got Demidov and Laine. We already thought Laine was going to get bumped off power play 1 for Demidov. That could still happen. So I don't know. I'm just not seeing it there. I still think Dobson underperformed last year at 39 points. I think he's probably closer to like a 45 to 55 point defenseman, but I don't think that power play one's going to be his, and he'll need an injury to Lane Hudson to really pop there.
Yeah, I feel similarly after mulling it over for myself. It seems kind of crazy to me to give 9.5 million to a guy that's not on your top power play when that is kind of one of his best assets is being a offensive defenseman. Now, I think that, Dobson has clearly taken a step in recent years to become a true top pairing defenseman, 5v5 in his own right. I don't think he gets pushed around defensively, maybe the way that he did earlier in his career. But I do think that it is a little on the high side to be paying somebody who's not going to provide you those extra minutes on the power play. So yeah, I think that that's the most likely scenario at this point is that Dobson is power play 2 and that will cap his ceiling. At the end of the season when we look back, Lane Hudson's got over 3 minutes average time on ice on the power play and Dobson's like just under 3 minutes and you're like, oh, like he basically had the same amount of time, but realistically most of it came with the second unit and as the dregs of the power play where,
Yeah.
it gets iced on the first power play unit and so they got to go back and get the puck and start from their own end with lesser players, so it's less likely to get into the end. It's just going to be less effective minutes that Dobson's probably going to get. That being said, like the 45-point pace that he was on last year, I really think that was the absolute bottom of the barrel that we could expect to see from him moving forward. I think he's got way more ceiling than that, even just based on a 5v5 role. I think that most likely I'm going to have him projected in the mid 50s next year, even with reduced power play time. So I'm still going to be in on Dobson. It'll be interesting to see where he comes in. I think he'll be well respected just because of the name brand and how he's been drafted in years past. So I don't know if I'm going to be drafting him actively come, September this year, but it's going to be an interesting one for sure. Another interesting piece of this is how do the pairs work now? Because
Mhm.
obviously Hudson and Matheson were a pair for a lot of last year, but Hudson is left-handed defenseman, and so is Matheson. Dobson is right-handed, so is it like a Matheson-Dobson top pair, and Hudson actually gets a bit of a second pair kind of role? He'll still get tons of minutes, and in offensive situations, whether they're behind late in the game, he'll obviously play a ton still. So I don't know necessarily that'll be a huge hit to his average much time on ice, but does he turn into a bit more of a second pair defenseman alongside Caden Gooley, perhaps, or something like that? And I'm just interested to see how this works. I think long term, you got David Reinbacher coming up. Matheson will eventually age out here. And then you have like a Hudson, Dobson, Gooley, Reinbacher top four, and that's the long term plan here. But for next year, I do think it'll be interesting to see if Hudson takes a little bit of a step back 5v5 in terms of the time on ice.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I really think that obviously they want to trot out their new shiny toy here in Noah Dobson, but Montreal was terrible defensively last year, like god awful. They were at 5v5, they were dead last in the league in expected goals against. Dead last. I mean, that's showing no good. So I don't know. I think they're going to look at kind of, pairing up players that make sense together, right? So, Hudson and Matheson, I think they'll probably still roll with that. And I could see maybe Gooley and Dobson playing together. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. And one thing too about this free agent frenzy, like these numbers with the salaries that these players are getting, it's a little bit askew. It feels like 9.5 for Dobson. You're like, okay, damn, this is their power play one. This is their guy, right? But we know the caps went up, and these salaries are higher than I think we're used to looking at. So I think we can prorate it a little bit. Like maybe in the previous cap, this is like a $7 million contract or a $7.5 million contract, which maybe makes a little bit more sense based on what we are used to thinking about. But yeah, for this year, it's 9.5. And I think that's going to nuke some of Dobson's fantasy value as well. When you get a guy in here getting almost $10 million per season, that's going to probably end up on power play too.
Yep. We should also mention that Montreal adds Zachary Bolduc
Love it.
for Logan Mailloux. I think this is a slam dunk deal for Montreal. I kind of wish they'd stop making these deals at this point.
Kent Hughes, he's going off.
As a fan of a division rival here, yeah, I think this is pretty much a slam dunk for them. Bolduc impressed in limited minutes for St. Louis this past season. I don't really know why St. Louis felt the need to get off him so
Yeah.
quickly. I understand like they wanted to add to the defense. That part of it makes sense to me, but is Mailloux really that guy? He did not impress in limited minutes last year from all accounts. So I think it's at this point, it looks like a slam dunk for Montreal. I think there's a chance that he walks himself right into a top six role. Basically anybody past the top end guys there are really not impressive, I will say. And I actually think Bolduc could be a really nice feature alongside of Demidov on a second line. They could kind of grow up together in that role. Bolduc will go in there and bang bodies. That's what he's known for, but he'll also actually convert when Demidov provides him with some of those sweet passes that we're anticipating. So I actually really like that move, and I'm looking at Bolduc as a potential sleeper for next year. You got anything else on Bolduc?
Just where do you think that he's going to be? Like I guess you're saying that you expect him to be fantasy relevant with Montreal, and I was just wondering what you think his value was with St. Louis compared to where it is in Montreal. Do you think he gets more fantasy value or less?
I think he gets more, right? Because I think there's more opportunity in Montreal. Like, realistically, who does he have to beat out to be the second line left wing here? He has to beat out line A. Like, they have Josh Anderson, they have Brendan Gallagher. If Alex Newhook is playing the wing, like, he could be there. Like, the bar to clear here is so low that top 6 minutes, I think, are if he plays the way he played last year, he will be the second line left winger. I feel pretty confident about that. So yeah, I think it's a really good spot for him.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess my thought with him is like he got power play one in St. Louis there towards the end of the year, and he's not going to get a sniff of power play one here in Montreal. So yeah, I don't know. I love the player, but I'm not sure if it's a net positive for him in fantasy. It's obviously a net positive for Montreal.
Was it power play one? They were doing a lot of split stuff there too. Cairo on one, Thomas on the other.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean he was getting power play looks. He definitely got more power play time than he will get there in
Right.
Montreal. I think that much is accurate for sure. But maybe they even have a better second unit here in Montreal, right? If Dobson and Line are on that second unit and
Sounds
Bolduc can
pretty
be a
good to
piece of
me.
that, like it might not be that bad. So there's definitely some paths to success for Bolduc where I don't really think that long term there was going to be that in St. Louis with the guys they had up front there. We should get back to some comments. We've had a few coming in. We've had a lot coming in. Does Eichel turn back into a volume shooter, 40 plus goals? Honest take is if he doesn't play with Marner, then he won't surpass this year's production. Yeah, I think that's possible that he gets back to 40 plus goals, but I don't think he is naturally the shooter. Like, I don't think he's a high efficiency shooter. He's not that caliber of guy. He was a volume shooter for a long time. I think a lot of that was due to him being the only guy worth having the puck on his stick at any given time. And so he'd get somewhere and be like, well, I could pass this into the corner or I could wrist it on net. And so he was just wristing it on net every single time. And now he's in a place in Vegas where he's actually got players to play with. You have Dorofiev coming on the power play, and so he's just deferring. He's finding these passes a lot more. It'll be very interesting. I do think that's an interesting piece to the Marner trade is how do he and Marner react to each other in terms of puck handling. They're both guys who love to have the puck on their stick for long periods. Do they work well together? Is there some growing pains? That is an interesting piece. We've got a slide for that coming up for sure. Do Dobson and Hudson negate each other's value, put a ceiling on each other? I don't think it puts a ceiling on Hudson necessarily, maybe for this season, as we mentioned, but definitely we do see a bit more of a ceiling for Dobson, and we're going together hand in hand into the sunset on that one, which is
As we
nice.
do.
What are your thoughts on Gibson and Anaheim? Team is cheeks, also running the show, improved Duck squad, nice Granlund ad, 0G baby. Yeah, Gibson going to Detroit there is interesting. That I think it might be the next slide, or it's very close. So
What a
stick
segue.
around for that one. Sabres with hashtag 0G legend Alex Lyon. It could happen. I can't get behind what the Sabres are doing this offseason. It's really tough to be excited about the Sabres right now, providing any value to a goaltender. I just don't know if that's there. Maybe things turn around a bit under Lindy Ruff in year 2. But it's hard to get excited about anybody. But definitely, we have seen stranger goalies provide better results. So I'm not gonna sit here on July 1st and say that I know that Alex Lyon is not gonna provide 0G value next year. That's for sure. Demko 8.5 milli. Love to hear Blake's take. Spend some dough on some stem cells.
Why
Yeah.
are we not funding this?
Talk to me about that one, Blake. We got a slide for this one too, but initial thoughts on Demko just as a fan of the team.
Yeah, it's a little bit risky, but I mean, at the end of the day, this is a guy that's been in the Vezina conversation. $8.5 million for a potential Vezina candidate. It's a risky, I think you have to take, right? And yeah, I think it's the right move, but it was close, you know, especially when you got a guy like Archer Shelovs in the wings, ready to come up and do something. They obviously have Kevin Lankinen signed for like a good amount of money as a backup. So yeah, I think 8.5 is absolutely reasonable for the talent of Demko, but you know, injuries, obviously, like he's got some issues. I've talked with Kevin Woodley a couple times about Demko and some of the issues that he has, just even with his play style and how it aggravates his injuries that he has. Like he actually had to change his whole play style, or he's in the process of that, so that it doesn't aggravate the injury more. But that said, if you're a team, you're a GM, you do your due diligence, and like if you're feeling comfortable to sign this guy to big money for 3 years, he's obviously like they must think that he's 100% healthy. And Demko at 100% health, I'm here for it. 8.5 million, that's a steal.
All right, you heard it here first.
Oh
We got to
yeah.
keep pushing this thing along, or we'll never get through it.
18
goes to
minutes on one
Philadelphia.
slide. I love
Yeah,
it.
it's not great. Trevor Zegras goes to Philadelphia for Ryan Paling, 25 second, 26 fourth. Blake, right away, is Zegras the 1C in Philadelphia from day one?
That's an interesting question. I mean, he'll get an opportunity. I think he's like, did you see that thing that Talkett said where he's like, we'd be idiots if we didn't play Trevor Zegras and Mitchkov together, right? So I think that's going to happen. Maybe it's like a second line type of thing. Like I do think Mitchkov's going to get much more opportunity than he did last season, but I still think Talkett's going to slow roll it a little bit because of this guy's lack of defense, right? And he's Talkett's going to have to show him how to play the right way, right? But he's going to get more opportunity. And I do think Zegras is probably going to start as the center for Mitchkov there. So it's a nice problem to have, right? We just heard today that Tyson Forster is going to be potentially injured for the start of the season. So that's just going to benefit Trevor Zegras. And, I do think if I had to bet on it, I would say Trevor Zegras is going to be a top 6 center there with a lot of good opportunity. And He should be power play one. He really should. I don't think they should put Sean Couturier out there on power play one. It should be Trevor Zegras, but we'll see what they do. I don't know. Where are you at with that, Nate?
Yeah, I think he's still exciting to me. Um, yeah, I think there is a scenario here at least where things really do work out. The all three zone stuff for Trevor Zegras still looks pretty sick under the hood. He's
Mhm.
still generating tons of chance assists, shot assists, all that kind of stuff. Still above average on all the rush offense kind of stuff and the cycle and forecheck offense. Like it's positive for Trevor Zegras when he's on the ice. So I do still have a lot of love for the player, even though the results weren't there under Greg Cronin. I'm giving everybody in Anaheim a pass under Greg Cronin, to be quite honest with
Absolutely.
you. I think that was probably the worst coaching situation possibly of like the last 5 years across the NHL. So yeah, I think that Trevor Zegras in a more stable environment where they clearly want the player, they targeted the player, acquired the player, they have a definite need down the middle for somebody to play like top line kind of offensive minutes. If not, like Couturier will obviously still get the defensive matchups, but could Zegras be the guy who hops the boards when they're down a goal in the third period more often than not? I do see that scenario for him for sure. And so, yeah, I think there's a real scenario here. It does hurt to have Forster out at first. He is kind of that true shooter that I think,
Mhm.
Michkov and Zegras are both more guys who want the puck on their stick. You have Konechny there, obviously, as well, who can kind of, I think he can kind of mold his game to whatever's going on around him. He's a bit more of a ambidextrous player that way. Owen Tippett maybe could be a force under Tocchet if he gets on board with the system there. I think there's a lot of ways that this plays out positively for Trevor Zegras. So as a sleeper, I'm pretty into it. I have here the over under on Zegras average time on ice. Put you on the spot, Blake. 18 minutes.
I think he gets over. I think you
Right.
bring a guy like this in, it's like the only thing that could affect it, I think, is he's not very good at faceoffs, right? Zegers is not a great player with faceoffs, and obviously his defensive game is subpar. But Philly's a team that needs to score some goals, right? And that's what this guy brings to the table. He's an obvious bounce back candidate to me, and I think he's going to get over 18.
I love it. I'm here for it. I'll probably be around that mark, just guessing when I do the projection, so that's why I put it there. But yeah, I think there's definitely an upside case for Zegras, and he'll probably be next to free in the 100s for sure in your fantasy hockey drafts. So definitely a guy that you'll be looking at later on. Let's keep pushing. Talk about Gibson to Detroit. He goes there for Petr Mrazek, 27 second, 26 fourth. So what's a split in Detroit between Gibson and Talbot? Obviously, Talbot kind of ended up handling the lion's share of starts there for
Mhm.
Detroit this past season. What do you think, Blake? If you acquired John Gibson, do you just hand him the reins right away?
Um, I think that's the point, right? Like this is one of the better goalies that was, rumored to be available, and they picked him up. And their goaltending, honestly, in Detroit wasn't great, right? They finished at 5-on-5, 26 overall in the league, right? That's not good, right? That's bad. Okay, there's only 32 teams, folks. All right, you see the math here. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. My main thing with Gibson in Detroit is not a team that generates a ton of offense, right? They're very efficient, and yeah, they're obviously like a mildly better defensive team than Anaheim is. They're better for sure, but Gibson is a guy that's really thrived when he's just getting blasted, right? He's a guy like Jacob Markstrom, where it's like 40 shots a game. That's where Gibson's doing his thing, right? The better defensive team in front of him, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to be capable of doing, right? This guy's, I think he's 32. He's going to be 32 here soon. I don't know. Gibson is a guy that I feel like is a little bit of a risky play. And it's going to depend, obviously, on how Detroit sort of shows up to the season here. But yeah, I think with those two goalies, it's going to be a short leash for either, right? I think Gibson's the 1A, but if he kind of craps the bed a little bit, they're going to have no problem going to Talbot there.
Yep. I think that's probably the way to look at it. 1A, 1B situation. Gibson with the injury history, they're not going to run him into the ground, that's for sure. But I do think you only acquire this guy at this cap hit if you're thinking that he's taking at least a 1A role for you. Moving over to Anaheim, then obviously it's now Lucas Dostal and Petr Mrazek, Lucas Dostal. Speaking of guys who love getting blasted with shots,
Giggity! Whoa,
he
buddy! All
took a
right.
lot last year for sure. And yeah, I think he maybe wore down a bit under the
Yeah.
workload over the course of the season. The team probably wore down over the course of the season too, partially from the other teams, partially from Greg Cronin. Last shot at Greg Cronin, I promise. Uh, I think that Dostal is the clear starter here. Maybe not as many games as he played this past season. I think it was 54 games this past season. That's a
Mhm.
lot. They'll probably try to keep him between 45 and 50 would be my guess, because Mrazek can play. And then they went and signed Billy Huso, which I cannot figure out. It was like for some decent amount of money, 2.2 million, I think, as well.
Mhm.
Like
Yep.
I have no idea what that's about, but yeah, at least they have some goaltenders. But this is Dostal's net now.
Yeah, he's the clear number one to me. This guy had an amazing season, and I totally agree with you what you said there. I think they sort of ran him into the ground. He wasn't really ready for that. They could maybe do the same thing that they did last year, and he's just more seasoned now. This guy, he understands what it takes to play 54 games in a season. And this Anaheim team, like I'm low key into this, right? These guys, there was a point last year where they were in playoff contention, right, and then they fell off under the Greg Cronin hellscape. Right. So now we've got Joel Quenville in here who, he's a good coach. He's a really good coach. Right. So what does that mean? That should be really good. They've obviously brought a lot of like veteran talent in here to help sort of bring along these young guys. And I think Dostal is one of those young guys, and I'm expecting him to have a good season.
Definitely. I think that I mean, he's not going to be a secret. People are going to be onto this. He's going to be everybody's zero G target or whatever come in September. I think that he's going to be worth it, though, especially if you're playing in a league where volume is key. Interesting question here. Do we think Cutter Gauthier gets power play one? If he has over 17 minutes, what would the projections be on him? I want to say yes, but we realistically don't know at this point. To me, Cutter Gauthier is the most exciting offensive player on Anaheim going into next year. I think that if it all breaks right for Gauthier, his upside case is like a 30 plus goal season, 70 plus point season. I think that's within the range of outcomes. He
Mhm.
came on towards the end of the year, in my opinion, even though Cronin was playing him less and less, he was getting better and better. Which, yeah, again, I'm not gonna.
He's going
I
out with a
said I wouldn't
bang.
do it. I
No,
said
but
I
you
wouldn't do
just,
it.
yeah.
So I'm not gonna take another shot there. Gauthier, I think, is an ascending star in the league, so I'm pretty excited about him moving into next year. And if I would have to take one player on Anaheim for the full year, as of today, July 1st, I would take Cutter Gauthier.
Oh my God.
All
That's
right,
terrible.
next one. We got to keep it going or we'll never
Right,
get
right.
into it.
Yep.
JJ Paterka to Utah. Huge deal, obviously. Goes there. Michael Kessering, Josh Doan coming back to Buffalo. Interesting question. Who are the line mates at 5v5? I've been trying to figure this one out. How is Utah going to split this thing up? They did do a few different things throughout the course of the season. They did try a Gunther Cooley Keller line at the end of last season and kind of left the second line for dead, more or less,
Mhm.
because of that. Now that you have Paterka, you can really fill out those two lines a lot better, in my opinion. So, what do you think the lines look like at 5v5, Blake?
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me. You got a guy coming in here that he's new to the squad, right? And I think Gunther, Cooley, and Keller sort of proved themselves. They all had amazing seasons, and Cooley and Gunther are primed to build on that, right? I mean, Clayton Keller, I think that's kind of probably his ceiling. He has a great floor too, though. But yeah, I think it's probably Paterka, Schmaltz, right? Maybe we could put Schmaltz in there, and then Barrett Hayton, I think,
Yep.
which makes some sense. I mean, I'm just looking at Daily Faceoff as well. That's what they've got. So, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that's a great starting place for Paterka. One of the things I'd like to see, obviously, is Paterka on power play one. I don't know if it happens, right? They got a lot of guys there that are doing stuff. If Logan Cooley, we've talked about him a lot. I think he's the kind of the bubble player for the power play, right? Maybe they move him off the power play and they bring Paterka up. But I mean, who's the center? Who's taking the face-offs? I don't know, because Hayton was the one doing that. So it's going to be interesting to see. But damn, I mean, I'm pretty damn excited about Utah. They've done some amazing stuff here. And yeah, losing Josh Doan and Kesselring, it still seemed a bit light to me to pick up a player like JJ Peterka, especially when you started hearing some of the other offers out there for Peterka. So obviously Buffalo likes what they have in Kesselring and Doan. But I mean, Utah was 5th overall in expected goals for percentage in the league at 5-on-5. Utah was. And now they've got a player that is an amazing rush player, a guy that's a bit of a chameleon. He can be the shooter. He can be the facilitator. JJ Peterka's, he's a burgeoning star for sure. This is a guy that I think probably has point per game potential in his career at some point. I don't think he'll get it next season, but possibly, right, with this deal that he signed here in Utah. So, yeah, I mean, my take would be he probably starts in the second line and potentially power play 1.
Yeah, I think that's a decent place to start. I feel less confident about the power play right
Yeah.
now. They have a decent setup there. Paterka had 18 points on the power play last year for Buffalo, so he was relatively good there. I don't think that he's necessarily like a difference maker over the guys that they've used there. Like Barrett Hayton was actually pretty effective when
Yeah.
he was on the power play in that specific role. He is good at getting to the net front, tipping pucks, all that kind of stuff. There's nobody else really that does that, I don't think, in this lineup. So
And the
they might
face-offs. Yeah.
and the face-offs is another thing. Yeah, you have Logan Cooley as the other center, not so good on face-offs. So even if Cooley sticks, maybe Nick Schmaltz comes off. I don't really think they have a guy that they could take Sergachev off for. I think most
Dursey.
likely.
Oh, yeah. Put Dursey
Yeah.
back on the power play 1, just as I called last year. All right.
They're gonna throw it back. So yeah, I don't really see the obvious path for Paterka. I'm not saying that it couldn't happen, but I would put the odds at like 1 in 3 or something, not very high, 40% maybe, that he's on the top power play to start the year,
Yep.
and they may try a few different iterations as they did last year as well. The other part of this, Josh Doan, can he play top 6 minutes in Buffalo? The underlying stuff on Josh Doan does not look that bad. Obviously, limited minutes. He didn't really ensconce himself up the lineup, so you don't really get a huge sample size to work with here with Josh Doan. But there's space here if he can make it work that he could push his way up this lineup. Like the wings right now, you have Zach Benson, you have Jason Zucker, Yuri Kulik, Alex Tuck, Jack Quinn, and then Josh Doan. Like those are your top 9 wingers most likely at this point. Maybe Kulik's playing center and Thompson is on the wing again, the way that they did that line before. But Josh Doan, I think, has a real opportunity to push his way up the lineup if he can continue to grow as a player. I'm not gonna rule out a guy whose father is Shane Doan, who
Yeah.
obviously has been coached on how to play the game, how to grow in the game. So I think it's at least possible and something to just keep an eye on. Keep in the back of your head the name Josh Doan. Moving on, Mason Marchment goes to Seattle. Frederick Gaudreau as well. The only thing here, I think, is does Seattle finally go to a true power play 1, and is Mason Marchment a fit there if they do? Otherwise, he just kind of fits into this massive group
Yeah.
of middle 6 forwards that they've continually amassed. And honestly, like the left wing side there in Seattle, like you have Jaden Schwartz, you have Jared McCann, who are actually probably 2 of their better of those forwards. Schwartz obviously has trouble staying healthy and has for years, but when he's on the ice, he's actually pretty effective. So I don't know that there's like a huge role here for Mason Marchment unless they go true power play 1 and he makes himself a critical piece of that. He does have a bit of a different profile than some of these other guys as a potential net front guy, a guy who can cause havoc there. So maybe if they do go that route, I could see it. But what's your thought on Mason Marchment in Seattle?
I'm a little bit disappointed that this is where he landed, honestly, because yeah, it's where fantasy studs go to die, right? That Mason Marchment is a guy that I think is bubbling under the surface, even in Dallas, and I think had sort of an underrated, unheralded role in Matt Duchene having such a good season, right? That Mason Marchment, when you dig in on the microstats, Corey Schneider's microstats, this guy balls out. He's crazy, right? Especially like shots off high danger passes. He's getting a ton of those, but rush shot assists, primary shot assist, chance assist, primary assists. He's a really good facilitator, and he's a great rush player as well. So all this guy does is generate offense, and now he's going to a place where they basically just throw darts at a dartboard to see who's playing with each other every night. And then, it's a 50-50 split on the power play. So it's a great trade for Seattle. I mean, to me, he's a step above this kind of middle six sort of identity that Seattle has. I think Mason Marchment is a player that I do like, but going to Seattle, I think I don't see how he's going to match what he was able to do in Dallas unless he gets a bunch more time on ice, right? This guy had 15 minutes, 20 seconds average time on ice last year. If he gets up to around 17 or 18, then yeah, maybe we can see a 55 to 60 point Mason Marchment where like he's a good banger too. Like this is a guy that he's had 100 hits, over 100 hits twice before. Good power play performer, but we know we'll have to see what they do in Seattle with their power plays as well, right? Is it going to be a 50-50 split like it was last year as well under Dan Bylsma? Probably, right? It's a weird team. They need a star over there, and they just don't have it, do they?
No, no, they definitely don't. Realistically, the only way that this works for me is if they do go true power play one, and Mason Marchment is a big part of that,
Mhm.
and then also he has to have like a pretty solid, not a third line, a true third line role there, and I just don't know if that's in the cards. There's a lot of ways that they could make this top nine work. And if you go by daily faceoff, they don't have them on any of the power play units right
Yeah,
now,
it's
which just
terrible.
goes to show you how many different ways this could go from here on out. CG asking, Rossi still available? Nux?
Buddy, please, God.
I don't think that would work anymore with the deals that Vancouver has made today. I don't think they've got any cap space. They're now projected by Puckpedia at $556,000 of cap space after the deals they've made today. So there would have to be some interesting work done there to figure out that kind of deal. But yeah, it sounds like the latest on Rossi is that he's sticking around in Minnesota. They're going to try to get something done. Even Bill Guerin came out today and said if somebody offer sheets him, we'll just match it and we'll go from there. So I don't think there's honestly much to go off of. It seemed like we were going to get a good storyline, potentially some more fantasy relevance out of Marco Rossi
Yep.
moving into next year if somebody was going to make a big pitch for him and make a big trade there. But unfortunately, it seems more likely than not that he just kind of runs back what he did this past year, but likely with less power play time if Kaprizov is healthy the whole season, and so on. All right, next up, Duchesne and Ben resign. Realistically, I don't think much changes here. Marchment leaving obviously changes the lineup for Matt Duchesne, but maybe under a new coach, there's a bigger role for Matt Duchesne. How do you think about that situation, Blake?
Um, Potentially. I mean, I don't know. I think that Duchesne 82 points in 82 games, buddy. Oh my God. I think I'm interested in Duchesne if he gets power play one. I think that's kind of an easy way to sort of say it. But this is a guy that is insanely detail oriented. The micro stats pop off the page. All he does is generate offense, rush chances. Like he's a very, very dangerous player. Not that great defensively, but who the hell cares? That's not what he's out there for. But I really think his fantasy value is going to live and die with whether he can hold on to power play one there, which he definitely had towards the end of the season. Like I'm just looking at his numbers here. I mean, last half of the season, he had 16 power play points. I mean, yeah, we'll see what they do there in Dallas. Obviously, we got Glenn Gullickson. Is that his Gullickson? He used to be an assistant on the Canucks. I was looking into that guy. He's never won. Like he's never won a playoff round. He's never. I mean, it's interesting. I sort of agreed with what happened there with Pete DeBoer because I didn't like how he, you know, threw Jake Ottinger under the bus. I thought that was crap. I mean, that's not what you do as a leader. But I don't know. I'm not super stoked on Glenn Gullickson coming in here to deal with this team that with a bunch of players in their prime. So we'll see. I liked what the Dallas did there under Pete DeBoer with their rush play. I'm not sure that it's going to continue there. And for that reason, Matt Duchesne, he's getting bumped down the board. I think best case scenario for Duchesne, 65 points. Run it back to 23-24. What do you say, Nate?
I'm just amused that you're gonna underrate Matt Duchesne for another
I
year once
have to,
again.
damn it. Oh, God.
Also, I want to just say the only thing that I remember Glenn Gullickson for is you remember when he was the coach of the Flames and there's that really highly publicized practice event where he goes on an F bomb just rant for like 20
Vaguely,
minutes and then
right.
chucks a stick into the stands.
Yes. Okay. That
Yeah.
was Glenn Gullison. I didn't
Yeah.
remember with him, but I do remember that. That's what we need, everybody. You know what? In
Yeah.
this world where so much is just going just bonkers, right? We need a little Glenn Gullitson in our life. All right. We need Glenn Gullitson to throw some sticks into the stands and just hurt people's feelings, right? Yeah, Nate's feeling it. He knows what's going on.
I had equipment malfunction over here.
Oh my
Apologies for
God.
that. Yeah, that's my take on Glenn Gulletson. That's all I know about him at this point. But I think there's at least a chance that Duchesne gets a little bit more minutes. But I do think there's probably a reduction in efficiency. It'll be interesting to see how they do run the power play units between him and Wyatt Johnson, Rupe Hintz, who's getting those minutes on the top power play. I think Jason Robertson is a lock there, but that could be another guy who moves around. So yet another season of
I know.
uncertainty in Dallas. Jamie Benn, I'm
Busy.
pretty out on, to be honest with you. I just don't see it this year. Maybe he's a streamer level player, but he's looks like he's taking a step back physically every single year that he plays. And now there's going to be even less for him to play with in that
Yeah.
third line role that he's going to play. I just don't think you're going to get much, if anything, fantasy wise from Ben this year. Over to Ottawa, Claude Giroux is staying. 2 million base salary and another 2.75 million in potential bonuses. Fabian Zetterlund staying there after being acquired at the trade deadline, 3 years, 4.28 million. You have any interest in these two players for fantasy next year, Blake?
Um, I mean, we talked about Drew a little bit in the old man show there. I think that, yeah, I mean, as a last pick, if Drew's there or, last two picks, it makes total sense because this is a guy that can do some damage regardless of if he has power play one, power play two, where he's at in the lineup. He's a slick player. He's really good at generating offense. And Ottawa has a lot of weapons, right? And Drew's has some tenure there and knows how to play with these guys. So I think there's a reasonable chance that Drew can be valuable. Zetterlund is a player that I am interested in, but obviously, as with any player, it's where does he play in the lineup, right? Like he got 41 points in 84 games last year. He's ahead of the game. He knows what's coming up next season. He's played 84. He doesn't care. All right, but obviously, we need some minutes. I think that like he was sort of minimized, especially when he got there. And then, towards the end, even like in the playoffs, like he was finishing a game with Adam Gaudette and Nick Cousins, right? So, and that's under Travis Green. That's the same coach. So we'll see. Do they want to give him a little bit more opportunity? Because if they do, I think this is a guy that can really pop like on the power play if you wanted to do that as sort of a net front guy. He's a banger. He's great in bangers leagues. So yeah, I'm keeping my eye. I feel like Zetterlund is going to be a guy that when Ottawa has a good schedule, we're like, is Zetterlund available? Pick up Zetterlund. Okay, great. Like, he's got a decent floor because of the periffs, but I don't know. It's a player that does have some juice, I think, has some jam. But he's going to need a hell of a lot of opportunity to make that come to fruition here.
Yeah, I think that Zetterlund kind of has some upside, at least from, the shots and hits perspective, doing the things that matter for us in fantasy. I think Giroux is just at that point where, yeah, he's probably going to have 40 assists at the end of the year or something like that, but there's nothing else going to be going on with his statistical profile. So for fantasy purposes, it's just going to be really lackluster. There will probably be some times where he's on the top power play unit, and that's going to be nice. But aside from that, I just don't want to be drafting Claude Giroux this year and feel like I can't drop him because it's Claude Giroux and feel like, yeah, I think that that's a player where if I'm in that range of my draft, I'm just going to draft somebody else who has more upside. And if they don't work out, then I'm still not going to be mad. I'm just going to go on to the next thing. I just don't see the upside case for Giroux to really be a difference maker for your lineup this
Yep.
year. Over to Chicago, Ryan Donato obviously resigning there, 4 years, $4 million. Big question for me here: is he on Connor Bedard's line all year? Blake, your take. Go.
Probably not. I don't know. I mean, I hope he is. That would be amazing. But like, we're looking at a guy that hit absolute ceiling last season, right? Like 62 points, 31 goals on this team. Man, congratulations, Ryan Donato. Like that's pretty damn impressive, right? Especially, he's 29 years old. He's never come close to that. That's more than double that is double of what his highest point total was before that, right? So there's no way we can expect this. I'm not saying he can't come close to that again, but in terms of fantasy, we want to put things on our side, right? And to just go ahead and expect Ryan Donato to be a 60-point player moving forward, no. Okay, hell no. It's not the case. I do think that his fantasy value floor stays reasonable because he re-signed in Chicago. He knows the coaching staff there, well, yeah, they're gonna have new new situation,
Yeah.
but he knows the players, he knows the systems, right, and he's comfortable there. So this is a guy that I think should hit the ground running. He's a metrics guy that we like. Right, he's good at generating his own chances, but in terms of like facilitating anything, that's not really his bag. This is a guy that's at the end of passes, and as he should be, he's got a great shot. But if he doesn't play with Bedard, I mean, who's next in line? Jason Dickinson? What? No, you're not getting 31 goals flanking Jason Dickinson. All right, giggity. All right. So I don't know. We'll see. I read something today from Ben Pope, who's a beat reporter in Chicago. He was just saying, or he was talking with the GM there. Oh no, I'm totally messing this up. I'm thinking of Craig Conroy in Calgary. Oh God, whatever. Never mind. But yeah, I do think that the lack of action with Chicago, it's a little bit concerning, but they're also sort of giving some confidence to maybe these young guys. Like, does Oliver Moore do something this year? Does he get a bigger role? Lucas Reichel, like, are they actually going to give him some runway here? I don't know, but it's all a bunch of variance to me. And Ryan Donato is not going to come close to his 62 points next year. So that stinks because I got a lot of love for this player. He helped me win a couple weeks just by himself with some big performances.
Yeah, the one thing that might redeem him, obviously, is last 20 games of the season, he's getting 18 minutes, 47 seconds average
Yeah,
time on ice. Now he's ostensibly a top line player for them
ostensibly.
moving forward. So, yeah, if he's getting 19 minutes a night, maybe he can get close to 30 and 30 again for 60 points. That's possible. It's probably still on the high end of his outcomes potentially, but if he does stick on the Bedard line all year, like, crazier things have happened. We've seen a nice year from him, and I think it's at least possible you get maybe a step from a guy like Frank Nazar between Bedard and Donato together, and they actually kind of get things going from an offensive standpoint. At least I still don't think the Blackhawks are going to be any good next year,
They
but
got to do something.
yeah, they have obviously struck out across the board trying to add anything to this lineup, which is pretty tough to see. But yeah, another year. Lev Shunov on the back end coming up could add some floor to this team. It could be a little bit better situation wise. You get a lot more deployment. I could see at least the scenario where Donato has a similar year in aggregate, just based off the late season deployment that he did get. We have to mention here that Andre Burakovsky also was traded to Chicago for Joe Veleno, who was immediately
Yeah.
dropped to waivers. So Blake's favorite, Andre Burakovsky, basically this is the reason that you should be excited about Ryan Donato is Andre Burakovsky's going to play with them all year.
You know what? I'm going to let that slide, Nate. All right. Because I haven't seen it in a long time. All right. But how dare you talk Yang on Andre Burakovsky? All right. This is a situation that I think is going to benefit Burakovsky. And this is a guy that I've been watching. Right. And it's strictly because of the microstats. Like he shows out in that. He does really well in zone entries. Right. This guy's an entry machine. He's driving a lot of offense. But look at the guys he's got to play with. Like that's sort of the rub there. It's like he had better players in Seattle. Right. Maybe less opportunity. But, like he had better players to play with. So now I think he's going to get more opportunity, but worse players to play with. So I don't know. It could be a wash. We're probably not going to see much. Like he got 37 points last year. I could see him capping out at like 45 this year. I don't see how he gets more than that. But if they do something and this guy all of a sudden just gets this is a guy again that I think is primed to do something for fantasy, to put the biscuit in the basket, but he's just not getting that opportunity for whatever reason. He's been really inefficient the last 2 years. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be watching him. I think we'll be streaming him for Chicago's good schedules this upcoming season.
All right, next up, Jonathan Taves lands in Winnipeg. I believe that's his hometown. So is he there to see, and how much does he have in the tank at age 37? Adam Lowry going to be injured to start the year. So I don't know, Blake, I'll ask you. In deeper leagues, Jonathan Taves move the needle for you?
No. I'm not interested at all. And we just did our old man segment, right? We did that episode. I would not be touching Jonathan Taves here. It's a great story. I'm glad he's back. I'm glad he's in his hometown, but this guy's going to be a role player for this team. He wasn't an offensive dynamo at his best, so what do we expect here? I think it's just they're bringing in a guy that knows how to win. He knows all the intangibles. He has the intangibles, right? He's a hard worker. And I think mentally he's good to go. Physically, he's good to go. So that's great. But he's also 37, right? So I just don't see it. And I'm not even convinced that he's their 2C, right? They liked Vlad Namenstikov there at times. They played him up there. So I think he's going to be in the middle 6. He's not going to get power play 1. And yeah, we're probably looking at like a 30 to 40 point season for Jonathan Toews. It's a great story. I think, again, a net positive for the team, but not so much in fantasy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not into Taves. You would have to show me a lot before I'd be interested in any sort of normal redraft league. Moving over to Florida, I don't want to talk about this, but
Oh,
we have
these freaking
to.
guys.
All 3 of these guys signing the sweetest of sweetheart deals. The Ekblad one in particular just blew my mind.
It's wild stuff, man.
Someone would have paid him over 9 million. I have no
Yep.
doubt on the open market. So yeah, left a ton of money on the table to stay there. I understand why they're doing it. They think
Yep.
they can win many more cups, and they're probably right. They have as good a chance as anybody over the next 3 years. The core is all locked up till 2030 at this point. Obviously, some of these guys are going to start to age out a little bit during that stretch, but man, you have to like everything coming up roses for the Florida Panthers.
It's amazing. I mean, I don't like the Florida Panthers. I don't want to say I don't like them. I mean, I love hockey, and I love, like, this team played to their identity more than any other team in the league in the playoffs. Like, there's no question. They did their thing, and they do it so well. They're well coached, and they had a great roster. But I mean, it's neat to see players do this. Like, take these deals that are less than what they would be able to get, and so many of them, right? And I think it started with Sam Reinhart, honestly. Like, he did that last season, if I'm not mistaken, right? He took a lower deal than what he could have gotten out there, right? And sort of set the tone. And I think these players know that what they have in Florida is special. But to me, it wasn't the Ekblad one. Yeah, he certainly could have got more. It was the Marchand one. 6 years. What? I mean, damn! I saw a tweet that was like, "Yeah, Marchand's going to be the most expensive like video coach, in the last like 2 seasons, or like a player coach." I mean, he's going to be decrepit out there. But obviously, he had an amazing playoffs, and good for him, right? Like, it's kind of neat to see, because this guy had such a good run with Boston, and now he's right in the wheelhouse for some more cups, some more success with Florida. So it's kind of neat. If you didn't hate Marchand so much, you'd be like, good for him. That's great. But, but I like all that's going on here. I mean, Bill Zito, what the hell? Like, I've seen it multiple times. It's a masterclass. And like, we're looking at a potential dynasty here if everybody stays healthy.
Yeah, for sure. All on Leafs Twitter, everybody's just moaning about how last year they signed Chris Tanev, and people were like, "This is cap circumvention. He's not going to play till he's 40." And now Brad Marchand this year signs a 6-year deal at 37 instead of 34. Yeah, I think that it's just this thing where if you can get away with it, why would you not do it?
Just pay him on
Right?
the back end. We'll pay you out. That's fine. You
Yeah,
retire.
they are not going to care about what the team looks like 6 years from now.
You get cups. No one gives a damn.
That's exactly it. So if you have the ability to do it, you should definitely do it. Let's move on. Marner to Vegas, sign and trade with Toronto. Nicolas Roy going the other way here. Basically, you need to think about a few things, right? You need to think about who's he going to play with at even strength. Does he play with Eichel, or does he play with Hurdle? For my money, and then I'll toss it to you, Blake, but for my money, he fits better with Hurdle. Just as the guy with the puck on a string, put him with Hurdle, put him with Dorofiev on the other side. I would love to see that line get to work. And then let Eichel handle all the matchup stuff, and let that line, the Barbashev, Eichel, Stone line, handle the matchup stuff, and let Marner, Hurdle, Dorofiev go to town on second lines. I think that's the way to go, in my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. That's what I would do as well. I mean, in my expert opinion, all right? Hey, Marty, get out there with Thomas the Turtle Hurdle and Pavel, all right? Get the biz. But yeah, I mean, we got an absolute unit of a shooter in Pavel Dorofiev. And then Hurdle, his facilitation and playmaking this last season, awesome, right? Like, this is a guy that played on a stinky team for a lot of years. And we sort of he kind of came out of nowhere, right? But he was playing with such bad players in San Jose. Then all of a sudden, you're playing with a bunch of good players, especially on the power play, and he had a great year. So I think that second line is where Marner lands with obviously power play one, like him and Eichel together on power play one. That's exciting. I think Eichel, because of Marner being there, I think he's going to do so much better on the power play. I feel like Eichel was a bit of a facilitator on the power play. I think he only got 5 power play goals last year. Well, that's going to go way the hell up. And when you got a guy like Marner in here, Marner is not the shooter on the power play. Obviously, he's a facilitator. And you got Hurdle, who's a great facilitator as well. So it's going to be Eichel and Dorofiev just eating PPGs all year. Vegas had an amazing power play, and the rich just keep getting richer, don't they, Nate?
They definitely do. I don't think there's any love lost for Vegas amongst many people,
Oh,
but it is interesting to think through who loses the power play one role here now. Obviously, last year it was pretty set in stone. It was Shea Theodore at the top, it was Eichel and Dorofiev on either side, it was Hurdle in the middle, and it was Mark Stone down low. Now somebody's coming off for Mitch Marner. That much is clear. For my money, it's Shea Theodore. I think Theodore loses the top power play. I think they go 5 forward. You saw Toronto do it with Marner at the wheel and be pretty effective with it. And I don't see Theodore providing something that they're going to miss with Mitch Marner in that role. Tell me if you think I'm wrong here.
I mean, I like the take. I think it's a little spicy, but Marner, remember a couple years ago, they're like, yeah, Marner's going to start the season on defense. You're like, what? The hell are you talking about, right? But this is a guy that he does that. He's very defensively sound. It's not a whiff to have him out there. So I think a 5 forward power play makes a bunch of sense. But that said, I mean, Theodore is so elite. He's so elite at that role. This is a great offensive defenseman, which we detailed last year in our projection series, right? And I'm a big fan of that player. So I think if I had to guess, I'd say Dorofiev is the guy that gets moved off of power play one. I hate it, but I mean, maybe it's as simple as like tenure on the team. You're like, yeah, this guy's only like a 3-year player. Shea Theodore's like been in the league a long time. We're not going to just bump Theodore off to keep Pavel Dorofiev on there, right? Especially when you got a guy like Eichel that can sort of take the role that Dorofiev maybe plays, right? I don't know. I would like to see them take Mark Stone off. That's what I want them to do, but he's the captain of the team, right? So I don't know. Are they going to do that? Maybe. I'd love it if they did, but if they don't, I think it's going to be Dorofiev. But I'd love to see what you're proposing.
Yeah, I mean, from where I'm sitting, Dorofiev is kind of a unicorn on that power play unit with the one-timer threat. They don't
Yeah,
have that from any of the other guys, to be honest. So, I mean, the myth of rational coaching, as I've talked about many times on this podcast,
what's that?
I just I would be gobsmacked if they took off the most dangerous part of that power play last year, with that being the threat of Dorfiev's one timer at all
Sure.
times, from short passes from Hurdle, from the cross ice stuff from Eichel, just moving it around the horn from Theodore. Theodore only had, like, his max is 19 power play points this past season. I don't think he's like, I mean, they moved him off top power play for Noah Hannafin when Hannafin initially just came over and trade. Like, I don't think there's any organizational um, ties to making
Loyalty.
sure he feels okay. I think Vegas has shown very clearly that they do not care if you feel okay. They're willing to move anybody and everybody at any given time if they think it makes them better. And that's what has made them so good since their inception. So, yeah, that's my take. We'll see where it lands, but definitely one that you're going to want to watch very closely next year. We'll have some very significant fantasy repercussions. The question at the end here: does Nicolas Roy hold any value in Toronto? I don't think so. This is a third line center role for him. Pretty clearly, he's going to play with Max Domi. Like, that's going to be the line there, and I don't think there's anything too exciting to say there. He'll fill in. He may, get elevated up the lineup due to injury at some points, and he may have some runs of stream ability. But I don't see Nicolas Roy being a needle mover for fantasy in any regard. Let's talk about Toronto then. Tavares and Nyes, they both re-signed. Tavares, another sweetheart deal here, 4 years, 4.38 million per year with some deferred money in there. Matthew Nyes, 6 years, 7.75 million per year. Also a pretty team-friendly deal at the end of
Yep.
it all. Like, that's going to look really good over the last few years of that deal for sure. And so you get these guys back. They're going to reprise their roles from last year almost to a T, I would expect. I don't really see anything that to expect different from them. The big question to me is with Nyes, does he take another step as a player? Does he take that step with the lack of Marner on that line at even strength and on the power play? What do you think, Blake?
I think that's kind of what the team is banking on, right? Like when you get rid of a guy like Marner, he has his own gravity, right? He drives a ton of offense. He's so creative with the puck, and Nyes was a beneficiary of that. So now, and we'll talk about him in a second, but Matthias Michelli, he gets bumped up there potentially, or is it Willie Nylander? Maybe. I don't know if they want to load up, but you're looking at it's a different look. You can't replace what Marner did. So we're gonna. I think we've talked about this a little bit in the last couple of episodes. Is these star players, these great players, being able to sort of mold their game, right? So 1 year Connor McDavid scores a bunch of goals, and the next year he's a facilitator, right? What happens? Like does Matthew Nyes change his game a little bit, right? Does he have to become more of a rush player? Does he have to start facilitating a little bit? Because right now he's the guy battling in the corners, getting the puck to Matthews. We was getting it to Marner and letting them set up, and then he was banging away at the rebounds, right? So I'm interested to see. I think I'm hoping that we see even more ice time, like 18:31. That's great. That's what he got last year. Can we get over 19? That would be amazing. Can he get the Austin Matthews treatment, the 20-minute treatment? Matthew Nyes, damn, like that. This is an exciting player. This guy's not even 23 yet. So I'm interested to see that. Obviously, Nyes is a guy. He shows up really well at finishing, getting his own chances. But in terms of facilitation, it's not exactly there. In zone shot assist is something that he's done pretty well in the past. Like he's in the 80th percentile there. So yeah, I'm a fan of him. I think it's great. And then Tavares, what an amazing thing for this guy to do. What a champion. 4 years at 4.38. Damn, this guy could have got almost double that. Like he had a great year. Maybe that's a bit spicy, but he obviously had a great year. Like he's still gets a ton of scoring chances. He's like Matthew Nyes, but like roided out of his mind. All right, just crazy. I mean, well, maybe not. But yeah, he's obviously amazing around the net. Had a nice bounce back season, 38 goals, and to take this deal here, obviously he wants to win, and he wants to win in Toronto, and you'd love to see it.
Absolutely. And then obviously Matthias Michelli, the other acquisition by Toronto, conditional third going the other way, moves to a 2029 second, I think, if Michelli gets 51 points this year. So, looking like a low risk Marner replacement, quote unquote replacement. Obviously, not the same caliber of player.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder if there's any chance of him getting on power play one. I said it at the beginning of this podcast. I don't see a reason to acquire Matthias Michelli to play him in the bottom six. That's not the kind of player he is. You don't go out and allocate I think it's 3.4 million cap space to a guy like Michelli and intentionally acquire him if you're going to play him down the lineup. You're looking at him to be a facilitator for these players like Nyes and like Matthews. And I think he can fit that. The all-three zone stuff on Matthias Michelli looks insane from limited minutes,
Really nice.
obviously, but he dominated, quite honestly, all those categories that we like to see. Obviously, the end results didn't really come through this year, and he kind of fell out of favor there in Utah. But it wouldn't be the first time that Austin Matthews has made somebody a lot of money
Yep.
by being on the receiving end of some passes. And Michelli is a passer, like first and foremost. That's what he's known for. He can have the puck on his stick, similar to a Marner. He can get creative with it in the offensive zone, can create some passing lanes. And Matthews, we know, is elite at finding the soft ice and getting himself open for shots. So you have kind of the same general line construction here. Obviously, a reduction in the talent at the Marner position going to Michelli, but in my mind, that is what they're trying to do here. Obviously, Michelli has to make that work, and he has to convince Craig Berube that he is the guy to make that work. But I think it's very clear in my mind that this is what they were targeting when they acquired this player.
Yeah. And they're getting him at rock bottom prices. Like rock bottom prices, folks. 18 points in 55 games. No, this guy had a 57-point season in 23-24. So that was just, I think it was more like you had young players in Utah that were kind of usurping him, right? That were on the rise, that the team had invested in, right? Guys like Logan Cooley, Dylan Genther, they surpassed Matias Michelli, but it doesn't mean, well, they're better than him, but it doesn't mean they're like way better. You know what I'm saying? I think that this is a guy that sort of just got a little bit of the shaft, or he was just a victim of the circumstance there in Utah. And what a plum situation he's landing in Toronto, because I agree with you 100%. Why would you pick up Matias Michelli? This is the only reason, right? Get him on that line with Austin Matthews. This guy is a true facilitator. And I think he has more in his bag. Like he's not even 25 yet. He's a 24-year-old man. I think there's a lot of gas left in the tank. It's a contract year for him, right? He's going to be a restricted free agent next year. It's a show me contract. Show me what you can do. And I think as well, like, and I think you're with me on this, Matthews is probably going to be healthy coming into the year. I don't think he was healthy last year. I feel like he's going to be healthy this upcoming season. We're going to have a bounce back for Austin Matthews. And if we're having a bounce back with Austin Matthews and Matias Michelli's on his line, that means Michelli's going to eat. Oh, yeah, buddy. Give the puck to AM34 and get the biz. All right, he's going to smash his career high 40 assist total next year. Book it.
Yeah, all right. I like the enthusiasm there for sure. Michelli's like the wool sweater you bought at the Bay closing sale. Is the
Oh,
comment
damn.
here.
I've done that before, and I wore it a couple times. Yeah, it's fine. It's for
It's fine.
special occasions, right?
Special occasion wool sweater from the Bay closing sale. I like that. Yeah, I don't think there's any power play one opportunity here. I think Morgan Riley is just going to be the guy again with Marner out of town. Riley will go back to power play one. I don't know that that's their favored way to run it, but with Marner out, I don't think they have that guy to be the fifth forward anymore in Toronto. So that's the way it's going to go unless something else happens. I did see Brad Treliving in his media availability today said the Leafs are not done. They're still looking to add somebody to the top six. So, that could still happen, and we could still have another evaluation to make at that point. But as where we stand right now, I don't see it for Michelli on power play one. I do think he'd probably be next in line, though, if one of the other forwards were to go down at this point. All right, we got to keep moving along. Morgan Geekie re-signing in Boston, 6 years, $5.5 million per year. Had that massive second half, teaming up with David Pastrnak. Can it continue, Blake?
No. All right. It was insane. I mean, Morgan Geekie, and I love the Geekster, all right? Nerd alert. Yeah, he's over here. By the way, get on over to our YouTube and check out this picture we have of Morgan Geekie. It looks like he's dropping a turd right in his hockey pants here. I could have chosen a better picture for the slide. But anyways, yeah, 33 goals last year in 77 games. This guy had 23 goals in the last 27 games. Was among the league leaders. It might even have been the best. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but that's massive, right? But it was all on massive efficiency. This guy shot almost 22% last year. That's going to go down, but it's a nice data point, right? And obviously he got rewarded for it. 6 years at 5.5. I think 5.5 is very reasonable for Morgan Geekie. Like if he can be a 25 to 30 goal scorer for that time, that's a slam dunk, right? And obviously he's figured out how to play with David Pastrnak, and they're going to really, there's not that many guys on this team right now that are going to be able to like he's going to be relied on, right? Like who have they got? It's not good there. They got Tanner Jeannot. Oh yeah, they signed Tanner Jeannot. What the hell? But I think Geekie's still going to be prioritized as an offensive player here on this team. I think he's going to get power play one, and yeah, I think he's going to get every opportunity to kind of recreate what he was able to do last season.
Yep. I think he's going to get all that opportunity and then some because they have nobody else. I mean, they went and acquired Victor Arvidsson, took him off of Edmonton's
I like
teams,
that.
and gave them something in return, which I'm sure Edmonton was very grateful for. Tanner Jeannot, they signed 5 years, $3.4 million, which is
The guy
immediately
had one good season off
just a
efficiency,
brutal
and
contract.
he's just eating. It's amazing.
Tampa Bay traded what was it, multiple firsts for Tanner Jeannot, and now
That deal
Boston.
is painful to look at.
And now Boston is paying him an insane amount of money. The Leafs got Michael Pezzetta for 2 years at basically league minimum, and I think Jeannot and Pezzetta are nearly the same player.
Yeah, I'll take Pezzetta. He's got better hair.
There you go. By the hair metric, Vizetta has him beat
Exactly.
for
For
sure.
60.
Do you have any love for Arvidsson? You have expressed some in the past, Blake. He's going to have a top six role here, I'd assume, because they literally
Yeah.
have no one else to play in the top six. Maybe some power play looks here or there
Yeah.
on that top power play. So, do you have any thought for Victor Arvidsson here in Boston?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I love Victor Arvidsson. It's unfortunate. I don't think we're ever going to see that Victor Arvidsson that I was hoping for. When he he was that great power play performer in 22-23. He got 25 power play points with only a 44% power play share. Victor Arvidsson, he did that. But yeah, ever since then, that was clearly the outlier. He hasn't even had double digit power play points since then. I mean, granted, he was injured one year and then he played for Edmonton, right? Who has, their power play one is pretty, we know who's going to be out there on the ice. So I do think that this guy should get double digit power play points though. And I could see Arvidsson kind of coming close to what he's done in the past, like a 50-point season, maybe a 60-point season. So in between there, 50 to 60-point season, Arvidsson, but he's going to need minutes to do it, right? We're looking at like, I don't know, 16 to 18-minute Arvidsson. And I think that's in the wheelhouse because, again, who the hell do they have? This is a guy that he's a metrics guy. He generates his own shots, generates his own chances. Casey Middlestad is still in Boston, who's a good facilitator. Does he get to play with Casey Middlestad? Maybe. Does he play with Elias Lindholm? Maybe. They're both decent centers. That's actually one position where I think Boston is like, okay, if you got Casey Middlestad at your 3C, that's a nice spot to be. So I think Arvidsson is going to have some good opportunity there and some decent line mates to play with, or at least a center to play with potential power play one. Shout out to Victor Arvidsson, 50 to 60-point Arvidsson. Don't at me, Nate.
I won't at you on that one. I don't think he's got 60-point upside anymore. I feel like those days have maybe passed him by at this point, especially with all the injuries he's sustained over the years.
Right.
But I do think that he will at least be in streamer conversations throughout the year. And potentially, if things do really break right for him, I could see him for a little bit more than that as well. Demko re-signing in Vancouver. We touched on it before. Really just need to think about the split between him and Lankinen, who they also gave a bag of money to. That part is very confusing. The 3 years here is interesting, but for fantasy purposes, like I'm not gonna touch this net situation next year. We don't know really if the Canucks are going to be any good next year. I think that's still very up in the air as of this point. It could be a decent spot, and it could still not work out just because the split could be truly 50-50. They just don't want to hurt Demko. If they did find their way into the playoffs, maybe Demko would be the guy in the playoffs, but I don't know. Tell me if you see it different. I think it's a 50-50.
Yeah, and I think it should be. So that is going to hurt for fantasy, but I think we're not the only ones that are kind of extrapolating that. I think, other people are going to be like, yeah, Demko's like, he's got some injury history, right? So, and they obviously paid a bunch of money to Lankinen. And I think rightfully so. Lankinen was amazing last year. He played 51 games. Damn. I love that. So, yeah, I think it's going to be maybe like a 55-45 split, probably leaning Demko's way. But they're going to be extra careful with Demko, making sure that he's nice and healthy. And that's going to equal value for us, right? Demko could be a 0G guy. I think Demko could absolutely be a 0G guy that you can get probably after round 10. I mean, who's picking up Demko before round 10? Are you nuts? Are you nuts? Like after round 10 Demko, though, I'm into it. I'm absolutely into it. I think that Vancouver will be better. I look at the season they had, and it was worst case scenario all around. Everything was worst case scenario. And like the metrics show that, right? These guys were horrible when it comes to expected goals for, like some of the worst in the league. They were not generating a damn thing. And it was vibes. It was absolutely vibes. All the stuff that was going on with Miller and Petey really affected the team. And, the stupidness that Patrick Alvin and Jim Rutherford were kind of just perpetuating, right, with their interviews and stuff. It spiraled out of control. Well, now we have really good kind of vibes going, and we'll talk about it. But Besser re-signing, Demko re-signing, Connor Garland re-signing. These three guys right here, they're heart and soul guys for this team, and they want to be here. And now you got Evander Kane, who we'll talk about a little bit as well. Like they want to be here, right? And we got a new coach, so I don't think that Vancouver will be as bad as they were last year. And they were almost a playoff team last year. So I feel like they'll still be a bubble playoff team probably, but they're going to be better. And I do think Demko's going to have some value.
All right. Yeah, I could definitely see it as I'm thinking about it in leagues like category leagues where you have more writing on the percentages than on the actual volume. That could be a situation where, yeah, if he's going very late in drafts, I could see a situation where I could talk myself into it as a late round flyer
As you
there
should.
where I don't really need to have the volume. So let's move along with the rest of Vancouver's stuff. Evander to Vancouver almost works, almost. Kane got traded for 25 fourth. The big question for me, is he a fit with Elias Pettersson and does he stick on power play one? Yes or no, Blake, to those two?
I do think he's a fit with Elias Pettersson. Absolutely. One thing that Kane does really well, forecheck, puck battles, get the puck to Elias Pettersson, right? Pettersson, not good at that, right? And he's sort of been relied on to do that, which is not his game. He's a softer player. Like, yeah, he hits and stuff. It's great. He blocks, but like in actuality, when you're watching the game, he's not a gritty player. He's not going in and winning puck battles, right? But Evander Kane does. And I think the style of game that he plays, he's obviously mean. I think he's going to create some space for Pettersson. And Pettersson knows what's at stake here, right? There's been so much said about his game and the expectations for him to come into the season fully ready to go. And I think he's taken that very seriously. And the team rewarded him by not trading him before today, right? So he's good to go. I'm a big believer in a PD bounce back. You know, what does that bounce back look like? Maybe 70 to 80 points. I think that's probably where Pettersson lives, and I'd be happy with that. Absolutely happy with that. But he has ceiling for more. And I think Kane is going to help him get there. I hope that Evander Kane stays healthy. Obviously, you know, I don't like the penalties and the dingus behavior that Evander Kane brings to the team here, but I don't know, for fantasy, it's going to be awesome. As long as he's healthy, this guy's going to shoot the lights out. He's going to hit the lights out, and he's going to get more opportunity than he got with Edmonton. I think power play one is a potential for sure, right? It's not a guarantee, right? We've seen that Connor Garland gets power play one there with the team. We still have Philip Hedl here. What does he do? Does he get power play one? I don't know. But I do think that if Kane does get power play one, then yeah, now we're looking at like a 60 to 65 point player with insane periffs. And yeah, that sounds pretty good to me for fantasy.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about this. Obviously, you have no idea about the locker room stuff. From the outside looking in, it honestly feels to me like Evander Kane has kind of cleaned that stuff up a little bit. Maybe that's just the gravitas of McDavid in that room, where you have to imagine if anybody steps
Yeah.
out of line for a second, it's like McKinnon and McDavid. Nobody steps out of line in those dressing rooms because they know what's at stake here, playing with some of the greats. But yeah, I think that there's a pretty good chance, like hometown kid, right, too, from
The
North
contract year
Vancouver,
as well.
and a contract year. I'm optimistic. Like, I don't think people are going to be high on Evander Kane going into the year, and for that reason, I think I could be talked into it, especially if we do get first power play, and especially if we do get some chemistry with Patterson early on. Obviously, we have to talk about the re-signings here as well. Brock Besser, the surprising one. Connor Garland, less surprising, but still nice to see. 7 years, 7.25 million per year for Besser. 6 years, 6 million per year for Connor Garland. I think you're going to be pretty happy about both of these, Blake. But how do you see it shaking out? Garland had a pretty good year. At some points, it felt like he was the only person still giving it on the Canucks throughout the season. But Besser coming back after the season that was and is a surprise to just about everybody, I feel like. So talk to me about these two and their potential for fantasy next year.
It was neat to see with Besser. Like even the insiders on Twitter were like, "What the hell? Besser re-signed with the Canucks? That's crazy." And I was surprised too, and pleasantly surprised. I'm so excited. Like obviously, based on what was going on here on free agency day, everybody was just signing their own free agents. There was not a lot of movement here. The trades are really hard to come by. Everybody is trying to get better. There's no obvious sellers like just digging into a rebuild. Everybody's trying to get better. So yeah, Canucks did the right thing here. They signed Besser. Obviously, they gave him the term that he wanted, 7 years. Yeah, it's a little bit rich, but the contract is insane. I think it's going to age really well. $7.25 million per year for Besser. This guy should be a perennial 25 to 35 goal scorer. I think that's where he lives. Obviously, he's lost his best facilitator, which was JT Miller. But, he's still a professional hockey player. This guy's got great hockey IQ. He's going to figure it out, right? We got an amazing rusher in Philip Hedl. Has some chemistry with Petey in the past, not so much at 5-on-5, but, if that's your situation, you got to figure it out. And I think that Besser will. He's obviously happy to be here. And then Connor Garland, damn, this guy was one of the lone bright spots. Him and Kiefer Sherwood here in Vancouver. You're like, these guys are legends. Amazing. Like Connor Garland was out there trying to fight Jacob Trouba. Like you pay the man whatever the hell he wants. I love it. 6 years at $6 million. That's a steal, especially with the cap going up. This guy got 49 points last year, 16 points on the power play. He's a gamer. He's like Matthew Tkachuk, but like 2 feet smaller. You know what I mean? Like that's what he reminds me of. He's a guy like that. He's not Matthew Tkachuk, folks, but you get the gist. This guy's a gamer. So I'm very happy. I think Connor Garland's going to be a streamer all year, even on Power Play 1. Like he had a good opportunity last year, only got 49 points. That's probably it, right? Besser, I think, we're probably looking at a better season than last year, but not that much better. Maybe a 60-point Besser is kind of what I'm predicting.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's definitely a player that needs things to be going well around him to really reach his ceiling. It's not a guy who I think is going to create everything for himself there, but I think that it could be a good spot. We talked about the upside case for Kane. If that comes through and he's playing most of the season on a line with Pettersson and Besser, even if Philip Hedl can return from all his injury issues and play a injury-free season. Crossing our fingers for that one there, just for the person, let alone the player there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I could see a couple scenarios where things work out decently well at 5v5 for Brock Besser, and he's going to be a fixture on that power play for the entire season. So I'm relatively interested. I think he's going to go pretty late. People are not going to be excited by this pick, but he is kind of a low floor, low ceiling kind of play almost at times, and sometimes those go
low
way
floor.
too low.
You son of a gun! No,
Sorry, high floor. High floor, low
Okay.
ceiling is what I meant. Like, I don't think the range of outcomes on Brock Besser's season is going to be too high. So I think that he is probably just a pretty bankable guy. He'll have some cold streaks, he'll have some hot streaks, but he will probably return value for you wherever you draft him next year. Moving along, Evan Bouchard re-signing in Edmonton. Think we can go quickly on this one. 4 years, $10.5 million per year, worth every penny in my estimation. Had a really terrific playoffs. Obviously, you have some of the lowlights that show up on Twitter after the fact and him giving away pucks, but literally that's because they want the puck on this guy's stick as much as humanly possible. He's probably the only guy on that defense that they want the puck on his stick as much as possible. And so, yeah, I don't really understand a lot of the hate with Bouchard. I mean, I understand the moments where he does have the controller disconnect situation happen upstairs. You see that on the replays and it doesn't look good, but if you go by any metric, Evan Bouchard is absolutely one of the top defensemen in the league, and I think that he's well worth this $10.5 million per year. It does put Edmonton into a bit of a cap crunch situation, but honestly, they've done pretty well getting rid of Arvidsson, Kane getting shipped out, and they're getting stuff back. Like, it's not much, but they're getting stuff back. They're not having to take on or like deal out picks. I remember when the Leafs had to get rid of Patrick Marleau, they had to deal a first to get out of that contract. Like, that's not what's happening here. So, yeah, I think Edmonton could be looking to have a goalie move come here as well, Blake. So, quick take on the Bouchard situation. I think both of us are just feeling like it's wheels up for next year. I think he had a bit of a down year in the regular season this year, turned it up in the playoffs. I think next year, regular season, I'm pretty excited about what he can bring. But then also on the back end, do you think they have a goalie move coming?
Yeah. Well, first off, on the goalie move, I mean, they have to. They have to. I mean, who's the guy they signed? Tompkins from Tampa Bay?
Matt Tompkins.
That's not going to do it, folks. Okay. I mean, I do like Stuart Skinner. I like him. I mean, he's a terrible playoff goalie, and I hate that these stats are accumulating up, but I think he's better than what he's shown. He's still a young guy. I love what he said. I don't know if you saw that quote where I'm talking about Stuart Skinner, where he was talking about Bobrovsky and like sort of picking his brain and be like, how do I be like you? Like, can you help me out? Like, this guy gives a damn. And I really like Stuart Skinner. He's just had a poor whatever. But yeah, they got to bring someone in. But on Bouchard, like absolutely worth the money. Insane. This guy's got 81 playoff points in 75 playoff games. What the hell? That's insane. I mean, I don't care if he like, you shore up the defense in another way. It's not coming from Bouchard. You let Bouchard cook, and he obviously has chemistry with McDavid and Draisaitl, and this guy's a beast, and he's going to be insane for fantasy. Where are you going to rank him in terms of like just off the top of your head, like fantasy defenseman? Where is he ranking for you in your list?
Yeah, if we're assuming some sort of general points format with maybe a little bit of bangers waiting, I think he's top five.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have Makar, you're gonna have Quinn Hughes, you're gonna have Zach Werenski as probably everybody's top three, but I think he's right in the conversation after that. You're gonna have Roman Yossi, Rasmus Dahlin, Evan Bouchard. I think that's gonna be the conversation at that point. So yeah, he slots somewhere in that group. I'm not sure exactly on July 1st exactly where I'll put him in my ranks, but I think he fits firmly within that group for me. All right, next up, we are heading over to Los Angeles. Andrei Kuzmenko re-signing their 1 year deal here, but 4.3 million, so he gets a little bit of money here. Was a pretty good fit, all things told, in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like it worked out. Him playing on that line, getting some power play time. Do you think that there is anything good for fantasy in store for Kuzmenko, or is it just going to be another season of us referencing the unbelievable head of hair on this man?
He's got a great head of hair. There's no question there. But I mean, the money says to me like 4.3. They're gonna give him some opportunity, right? And I mean, I would like to see more than 1 year though. Like this could very easily go the way that it's gone for Kuzmenko. Like halfway through the year, he's in a major slump. He doesn't have any points, and they just ship him off to some other team, right? Because this is a guy that has shown so far in the past, and maybe not. I'm not talking about last year per se, but certainly when he was with Vancouver, and then when he moved over to Calgary, like yeah, there's some defensive deficiencies, right? He's not doing what the coaches want him to do, and that's a problem, right? But I did like to see what he was able to do there in LA. I thought that was really encouraging, like 17 points in the last 23 games. Pretty damn nice, right? And he was getting power play one. So it's an offensive player. He needs offensive opportunities to really pop for fantasy. He's a beauty. He's an absolute beauty. I mean, what was the line he was playing with? It was Kopitar and Kempe? Sheesh. I mean, if they run that back, yeah, I like a 50 to 60 point big Kuzi. I don't know. Where are you at?
Yeah, I could see him get there. I think that that line could get a little bit of a demotion at even strength next year as the
Yeah.
Byfield line with Fiala really starts to take over. So that would be my caveat there. And yeah, it's still a player that has seemed to work himself out of favor everywhere he's been over time. So I still am going to build some of that doubt into the back end of my mind. I can't really avoid it, it feels like. Los Angeles, honestly, this feels like a horrific free agency period for them. They signed Corey Perry, they signed Joel Armia, they signed Brian Dumoulin to a 3 year, 4 million per contract at age
Ew.
33.
Oh my
Uh,
God.
they signed Cody Cece to 4 years, 4.5 million. Like, I can't
Make it make
defend either
sense.
of
Make it
those.
make sense.
And they already have Joel Edmondson at 3 more years, 3.85. Like it yeah, it's unbelievable how bad those contracts are already on the day they're signed. So that part is really tough. It's going to be another situation like who's going to move the puck out on the back end. Brant Clark has to play more minutes for them, but they already showed that they don't really trust him at all. And so, like, I don't know. It looks really, really rough from the back end. They even go out and sign like Armia is a fine player, but you're paying your fourth line players upwards of 2 million. You
Yeah.
just can't do that, in my opinion. You gotta like look at what Florida did, right? The Greers, the Gadjeviches, the Noseks, these guys are under $1 million and they're giving you hard fought minutes. Even if they're not great minutes, they're hard fought minutes every single time. And they're giving you that to you for the cost of one of these guys on LA here. So, from a team building perspective, I just absolutely hate everything that's going on in LA right now. And that part is tough because it feels like it could fall apart at some point. Hopefully, there's enough gravitas here with Byfield's ascension, with Fiala continuing to be terrific, with Kempe continuing to be terrific, with hopefully the ascension of Brant Clark. You know, they chose
Yeah.
to move on from Jordan Spence and keep Brant Clark, which I think is probably the right move in the end. I don't know why they felt they had to move on from Jordan Spence necessarily, just so they could sign Dumoulin and DCC to these horrific deals. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, at least Brant Clark is still there. And maybe there's some offensive upside that comes from the back end out of that. But I just can't get too excited for LA to do anything more than what we saw last year based on this offseason for them so far. Next up, Columbus. They're keeping Ivan Provorov going from one of the best heads of hair in the league in Andrei Kuzmenko to probably the worst.
Yeah.
James Reimer also
Unbelievable.
up there, but yeah, definitely one of these, one of the two. 7 years, 8.5 million per year for Provorov. Columbus also traded for Charlie Coyle, Miles Wood. They re-signed Dante Fabro. One of these four deals I like for them. Fabro was
Yeah. Hell yeah.
obviously a hit with Zach Wierenski, solidified that pair for them. He doesn't have to do anything but just play stay at home defense, and that's what he's good at. Nashville stays losing, just letting this guy go for free, and now he's a top line player for Columbus and doing pretty good for himself. Provorov, I think, you know, he's streamable in deeper leagues on weeks that Columbus will have a good schedule. He's probably going to score 35 ish points next year again and do all that. Charlie Coyle, I think, is just your prototypical third line center. They had the cap space, so I guess they felt like they could do it. So I'm not too excited about any of these moves, honestly, for fantasy, though, Blake.
Yeah, no, there's nothing going here. I mean, even Provorov, like when Morensky is injured, I guess he did see power play time, right? But are they going to do that again? I don't know. You know what his hair is like to me? You ever see that episode of The Simpsons where like that Don Mattingly, the Homer played a baseball game, and Mr. Burns was telling him to shave his sideburns, and he basically just shaved his entire like right up to his head. You know, like that's where Provorov, that's where he lives. All right, this man has a disgusting head of hair, buddy. Get some, go over, like, get some hair plugs, do something. All right. Rogaine, I'll tell you actually right now, Rogaine does not work, Nate. And this is something that you might deal with in like 10 years, maybe 20 years. You got a nice head of hair yourself, but Rogaine does not work. All right. And Provorov, Rogaine does not work. All right. So you got to move on. But, I don't know where we're going with that. I do like Dante Fabro. I think he's awesome, and I love the Coiler. All right, I think that's a good move for Columbus. In reality, it's not going to move the fantasy needle one bit.
All right, moving along. Patrick Kane re-signing in Detroit. 1 year, 3 million
Yeah,
base salary, up to 4 million more with bonuses. At least two of that is basically like show up and play 10 games, I think. So he's definitely getting at least 5 million, I think, and probably closer to the 7 than the 5. So he's going to get a fair amount of money here. He's going to run it back, right? Like it's the same role that power play was insane last year.
yep.
And so they're hoping to just recreate that magic. He is a bit of a power play specialist at this point, but also he can play on a second line winger position and still be quite valuable in that spot. I don't know if you see anything different there with Patrick Kane.
No, I think this is a guy that's going to be valuable and available later in drafts. Right. This is like he had a pretty nice year last year. I remember texting you when I was like, someone dropped Kane in my league. I picked him up. This is insane. Like, am I going to win the league? Like 29 power play points last year. Damn. He's amazing at that. 59 points in 72 games. I love it. I just think, yeah, I don't see any reason why Patrick Kane wouldn't be able to sort of replicate what he was able to do there. And maybe Detroit is a little bit better in terms of like expected goals for, right? I mean, I'm not basing that on anything, but like it was pretty bad last year. So maybe it goes up a little bit. Like obviously we have to dig in, but yeah, I think I like the line that he's on there. I think it's really good. And I love Marco Casper as well. Like he had a really nice end of the year, and that was with Patrick Kane as well. So this is a great move. I think a 1 year deal, and I think Kane is going to give you some value as a guy you could draft, well after like 120, I bet, and really see the benefit of that.
Yep. Yeah, I'm definitely interested in Patrick Kane. I think most people will be relatively interested in him once again next year after the season that he had. So I don't think you're going to get like insane value on him, but he's definitely it looks like even the microstats look terrific on Patrick Kane in those
Yep.
minutes, still entering the zone with the puck all the time. He can still handle the puck, keep it on a string. So that's definitely within the bag for him. Detroit also added some elite initials to their squad with JVR, Jameson Reemstijk, and JBD, Jacob Bernard Docker. I don't think either of these really move the needle for fantasy. I guess JVR could, still be that net front guy on a power play, but that would only be, in my opinion, if one of the normal four forwards on this Detroit power play got injured and they decided to change things up to get that look. So I don't think there's much to say there unless we get some injuries. Moving right along, Dan Vladar going to Philly. It's a 2-year deal, 3.35 million. Was that in total or was that per year? I think that was per year, wasn't
Per
it?
year. Yeah, per year.
That's a pretty nice little payday for Dan Vladar. So obviously he's going to try to compete with Samuel Urson for starts. If you had to handicap the starts for each of these guys next year, right now, Blake, where would you put it?
I think I would go 1A with Urson and Vladar with a 1B, but again, short leash, right? Urson he had some problems. He's had some problems throughout his career with consistency and putting up some bad starts, like where he's actually hurting his team. And Vladar had a pretty nice year with Calgary, albeit like that's a good defensive team. But I think Vladar has some value to me. I could see him taking the net over in Philly, and I could also see Philly being a more just a team that we're more interested in this year, just due to the fact that Talkett's gone there. I think that like Tortorella, as much as we love to talk about him and make fun of him, yeah, he was good for certain things, but actually getting dubs, wins, no, I don't think Tortorella is there for that. He's there to teach players how to play the right way. Okay. You play the Tortorella way, but now you got Talkett in there, who's a player's coach. I think the vibes are going to be better. And I think the team's actually going to perform a little bit better. So if that's the case, I do think Vladar is going to, he's going to have an opportunity to maybe take that number one spot.
Yeah, I think there will probably be an opportunity at some point for him to get a run of games. I mean, we haven't seen anything in
Right.
Vladar's career
A
to
lot of
suggest.
variance.
Yeah, we haven't seen anything to suggest that he's going to run with that the second he gets it, but there will probably be a stretch where he's at least relevant for fantasy purposes. I'm not going to be actively drafting either of these guys, I don't think, unless it's with my absolute last pick in the draft. Logan Stankoven gets $6 million per year over 8 years in Carolina. Quite honestly, this is kind of a puzzling deal for me. I don't know why he would sign up for 8 years. I feel like you bet on yourself a little bit here, and you expect that with the cap going up the way that it is, in another 4 or 5 years, you could be looking at, I don't know, maybe double this number if he
Yeah.
really pops off. But yeah, in this current situation in Carolina, it gives them a lot of flexibility cap wise moving forward, and he is going to get some opportunity. Probably middle six, maybe a chance he gets up to the Aho line at some point throughout the season. Bryn Moore does like to blend lines throughout the course of the year. And then potential for power play one. We've already talked about it. Stankoven or Jackson Blake on power play one is going to be a question that we're going to be asking, we think, at points throughout the season. Where are you leaning as of now? Does this signing mean anything to you fantasy wise?
Well, to me it means that obviously the GM and the coaches probably have some confidence in this player, right? They're willing to lock him up for this long of a term. That's excellent, and it's gonna. I do think that it's going to be a steal for them at some point, like $6 million per for this guy. This is a guy that. He really shows out in terms of offensive generation. This guy's great at chance assist, shot assist, all that stuff. I mean, zone exits, zone entries, all this stuff. He's great. He's just small. He's like he's one of these short kings that people that just kind of sweep under the rug. They're like, this isn't going to be relevant, but this guy's going to be a real player. He's going to be a difference maker for this team. The problem is who's he playing with? Right. Right now, Daily Faceoff has him with Jordan Stahl and Jordan Martinook. Terrible. Okay, that's awful. And then plus, add to that, he's probably going to be on power play 2, right? I mean, they had Jackson Blake on power play 1 last year. Who knows what they're going to do there? I'd rather see him obviously on power play 1. I think he's a better fit there. But unless he gets onto the top line, which is not possible, right? So it's got to be like the second line. But then who's he playing with? Taylor Hall and Jesperi Kotkaniemi? He's no Marty Necas. Okay, Marty Necas can make it work no matter what. But Logan Stankoven, obviously, he's going to need a little help there. So we'll see what Carolina does. I think they still have some pokers in the fire. They're trying to make some moves, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But that all said, I feel like this is a player that is going to develop into a pretty solid performer for them production-wise. Maybe not next year. Like, he had 38 points in 78 games last year. Maybe he gets up to like 45, 50. 50 points for Logan Stankoven, I think, is probably ceiling, unless he really pops off with his time on ice.
Yeah, that is always the case with a Rod Brind'Amour coach team. Unless you are Sebastian Aho, you are not going to get the minutes, and therefore you're probably not going to be a world breaker for fantasy purposes. Still think there's a good chance that Stankoven asserts himself a little bit more in another year and provides something of real value for fantasy here, but it is a situation where it is going to be a bit of a wait and see, him or Blake on the power play. They have preferred Blake throughout the season. Maybe Stankoven is the more talented player overall, but if he's not the one chosen for the role, then that's obviously going to limit his upside.
Before we move off of Stank, sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
Have you heard? It sounds like Carolina is really pushing for Ehlers, and there's a good if Ehlers goes to Carolina. Now, you can put Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Ehlers, and Logan Stankoven on a line. I'm a little bit more interested in that. Obviously,
Sure.
yeah. Anyways, like, we might talk about Ehlers later. He hasn't been signed or done anything here, but I do know that Carolina is in on him, and they're going to try and make an offer there and see if they can pick him up. And if so, anyone with access to Ehlers is probably going to get a boost in fantasy value.
Absolutely agree with that. Sticking with Carolina here, Keandre Miller sign and trade situation here as well. 8 years, $7.5 million. Obviously, a pretty big commitment to the player. Carolina buying that it was just a Rangers problem, not a Keandre Miller problem last year, and that he'll bounce back for them. I think that's a pretty good bet to make, to be quite honest. I think Carolina's system can make players look better than whatever it was that was the debacle of the New York Rangers last year. I don't know that this is a huge fantasy relevant maneuver for my books. Like, Keandre Miller has never been a guy that we're earmarking for a top power play, right? So I don't see, again, a situation where he's going to just be headed straight there. They have Shane Gostisbehere under contract for a couple more years. It looks like the most likely situation to me. Do you see it any different, Blake?
No, and even if it wasn't Shane Gostisbehere, you still got Alexander Nikishin there as well. Like, I think this is a kind of a signing just to shore up their defense, like get them another young guy in here that that they think is really going to fit into their system. And he does a lot of things well. Obviously, he had a really bad year last year defensively. Like, on his microstats here, he was in the 9th percentile in entry chance prevention. Like, that's pretty bad. All right, that's a really good indicator as like how you're sort of helping your team stop people get into the zone and get chances. He was really bad at that. So, like I said, I think they're buying a defensive bounce back here, and he's going to fit in there. But for fantasy, I don't think there's going to be any value outside of Cats leagues.
Yep. And I will say, I said Shane Gostisbehere is power play 1, but keep your eye on Alexander Nikishin as well. I think there's a chance that he is just an absolute stud and asserts himself there. So keep an eye on that one. Heading over to the other side here, the Rangers, who obviously traded away Keandre Miller, they replace him with Vladislav Gavrikov, who pretty clearly wanted to go there. Not sure all the reasoning, but definitely took less than market to go to the New York Rangers. 7 years, $7 million. He blocks well, but it's not much else. Like, he's a defensive defenseman. I don't know if that really realistically translates into anything greater for the Rangers. I think they've got to fix their internal problems more than their player personnel problems. They have good talent across the lineup for sure. They just got to get it all pointed in the right direction. Will Cooley also resigning here, 2 years, $3.9 million. Nice little payday for him after he had a terrific season. Do you have interest in Gavrikov? Do you have interest in Cooley next year?
No, nothing with Gavrikov. I do think it's going to benefit the Rangers just in general. They were terrible last year. I mean, 8th worst in the league in expected goals against at 5-on-5. So you bring in a guy like Gavrikov, that makes sense. To me, you know, like you can spin it any way. Like the best offense is a good defense, or the best defense is a good offense, right? But like, yeah, you need to shore up the defense. They were terrible, and they obviously did that here. So that could equal a better performance for some of these other players. Plus the new coach bump. Will Cooley, yeah, for him, I think there is a little bit of opportunity there. Maybe he gets into the top 6, but he's not getting power play 1. I think a season similar to last year is probably best case scenario. I don't think he's going to fall off huge or anything like that, but yeah, it's a guy that you're obviously interested in for bangers leagues, kind of a la Kiefer Sherwood, right? I think that there's value for a player like that, but it's only in certain formats.
For sure. We got JB Canucks podcast stopping by saying cheers. Good to see you as well. Armin has a question. Which two would you keep for next year? Werenski, Crosby, J Rob. Categories are goals, assists, power play points, shorthanded points, plus minus, hits, and blocks. Who would you say, Blake? Werenski, Crosby, Jason Robertson. And the categories again goals, assists, power play points, shorthanded points, plus minus, hits, and blocks.
Werenski and J Rob. I think, and it's only because of Crosby's age. Not that I don't think he's going to perform, but at this point in his career, I'm looking ahead, like not even to next season, but the season after, right? Like you're going to lose out on a player like Werenski or J Rob because you want one more good year out of Crosby. Like, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, maybe if you're in true win now mode, like maybe you take Crosby over J Rob, but I think I'd just rather go with J Rob there.
Yeah, honestly, I might take J Rob straight up over Crosby, even if it is just for 1 year. I think that, yeah, J Rob came on at the end of the season, was
Looks good.
pretty terrific. Got injured again, still came back and had an impact in the playoffs as he got healthy. So I think that we should be excited about J Rob next year. And yeah, could be in for a huge season alongside Mikko Rantanen, the best player that he's ever played with. Keeping on going, but staying in New York. On Long Island, we have the Islanders signing Tony DeAngelo
Oh yeah.
for 1 year, 1.75 million. Also signing big save Dave Riddick. I don't know how long ago we coined that nickname, but I think it's probably worn out
No,
as well.
he's still doing it. He
He
does
is?
that.
Okay,
Come on,
okay.
let's go.
He
Yeah,
still does
they
that.
signed him to a deal. He does that.
And Jonathan Drouin, 2 year, 4 million per deal there. The Drouin one first. I just hate this deal. I think he is like a worse version of Matthew Barzal. And what are they going to do? Are they going to play Drouin with Barzal and have them just pass the puck back and forth between each other and never actually shoot it on the net? Like, is that the plan for the offense under Patrick Waugh here? I think stylistically it's a horrible fit. Now, he's probably not going to play with Barzell just because of that, at even strengths at least. So maybe there's a scenario in which he can help to some extent a second line. I just don't think that Drouin is that dude. I think that he was definitely buoyed by Nathan McKinnon. Yeah, I think that maybe he can play with a Kyle Palmieri and, bank some pucks in off Kyle Palmieri again. But like realistically, this is like a 40-point player, 45-point player outside of the Colorado environment that was so kind to him, in my estimation.
Yep.
I really don't see a path to Drouin having a big year. Tony DeAngelo, on the other hand, if they're going to play him the way they played him last year, I don't know if that's like their best case scenario or what they're really expecting to do. Obviously, the money is not much. He's kind of betting that he can have a big year here, I think, and get a better payday next year. That's why he's going for this 1 year deal. He didn't see a better situation for him to, man a top power play and get out of town with a
Yep.
50-point season or something. That's what he's going for here, I think, pretty clearly. And I think the Islanders will be kind of happy to give that to him. I think he's going to play top power play all season long, and he may or may not get 20 plus minutes a night. If he does, then yeah, I think you could be looking at a guy who could get you 50 to 55 points because he still can play offensively. I think he's pretty terrible defensively, but he can play offensively and he can score some points for fantasy purposes. Yeah, I'll be drafting Tony DeAngelo late. I'm not going to be happy about it, but I think that there are going to be plenty of people who just won't entertain the thought of Tony DeAngelo being good, especially on the Islanders, who have had a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth for a long time and did not end the season well last year. So there will be some recency bias going on. I think Tony DeAngelo will actually be a pretty solid value in drafts this year.
I can't disagree. I want to, but I can't. I mean, Yeah, 50-point Tony D'Angelo, that's in the wheelhouse. And that's valuable for fantasy, especially like who's drafting him? Like, and
Yeah.
when you're getting this guy late. And there's a very, very good chance that he runs power play one there on the island. And it's not like it's going to be, a barn burner, but he's out there. Barzell's going to be back and healthy, right? You got Horvat, who's a good power play performer. Drouin maybe could help on the power play there. I don't know what they're going to do. But yeah, I think of these three here, Tony D'Angelo is the player I'm interested in. Drouin is dead to me. I just, yeah, his value is absolutely nuked because not only what did he have access to McKinnon, but he was also getting like 20 minutes a night. He's not going to be getting anywhere close to that with the Islanders here. And for those reasons, like, yeah, he's going to be streamer level at best. Whereas, yeah, Tony D'Angelo, what are you doing? Yeah, he's going to be valuable. Unfortunately, again, horrible head of hair on this man, buddy. Just shave it off. What are you doing?
We can agree on that. Heading over to Washington. Realistically, there's only one reason to mention this on a fantasy podcast, and that's to say that Martin Verri has re-signed with the Washington Capitals, 7 years, $6 million per. I mean, the guy has some value as a streamer in Bears Cats leagues, but realistically, I just wanted one more chance to butcher this man's last name.
Now, you know what we call him? The Ferrari. All right. It's the Ferrari. He rides again with Washington. That's a big contract for Martin
Yeah.
Ferrari. I mean, that's great. Obviously, he's a banger, but I think he's going to see more time on ice there with the team. I don't know. He's your banger beauty. There you go.
Absolutely. Keep it pushing. William Eklund re-signing in San Jose, 3 years, 5.6 million. Nice value for those 3 years. Should exceed the value of that contract, but I think he is one of these players that's kind of setting himself up for a huge payday 3 years from now, and he's kind of seeing that coming down the pipe. So that's the case here, and San Jose seems to be willing to facilitate that for the time being. I believe he will still be RFA after this is up, so they do have some amount of control over the player even after the contract is up. I'm just trying to validate this before I perjure myself any further. Do they have this up? Yes, he's still RFA. Puckpedia coming through in the clutch there.
Nice
Will he
work.
be top line? Will he be top power play? What do you think, Blake? Because you start to look at this, San Jose's got some players now. They've got the Tyler Toffoli, they have the Macklin Celebrini, they have the Will Smith, they have players coming up behind them as well. This is not an organization short on prospects. On the back end, they've got
Yep.
Luca Cagnoni, they have Sam Dickinson who could challenge for some scoring roles. They have acquired John Klingberg here to potentially run a top power play, question mark, on the back end here. But also up front, they have some players coming through, guys like Chernyshov coming through who may see the NHL as soon as the season. So, what do you think about Eklund? Do you think that we're going to get true top line, top power play kind of minutes from him at any point throughout this contract?
Yeah, I do. I have a lot of faith in this player. I liked what I saw last year, just basically with his time on ice. I mean, what a nice season. He averaged 19 minutes, 33 seconds average time on ice last year. And granted, like, yeah, it's a pretty stinky team there in San Jose, but they're not that much better. Like you said, they do have some young players that could challenge for spots, but who's taking this guy's role on the top line? I don't see it, right? Like, Daniil Gushin, Nikolai Kovalenko, Noah Gregor. No, I just don't see that happening, right? And it sounds like if Tyler Toffoli wants a spot on the top line, Will Smith might move to be the 2C, right? Like, so I think William Eklund's role on this team is secure. I think his role on the power play is secure. We love Macklin Celebrini, right? This guy is a stud. It's a player that, I mean, I think we're both pretty excited about. I don't know where he's going to go in draft season, but point per game potential as soon as next season, in my opinion. And then you got William Eklund in the sidecar, right? And he's no slouch. This is a guy that shows out really well as a facilitator, right? Chance assists, shot assists, high danger passes, right? Those are the type of passes that Macklin Celebrini likes. All right. Because what he does is he bears down and he puts the biscuit in the basket. Okay. So, and then obviously Will Smith having a great end of season there. I'm a big fan of William Eklund. Obviously, like, as a guy I targeted or looked into at the beginning of last season, just due to the micro stats and his ability to enter the zone and drive offense, right? And yeah, I like the 3-year contract here. Like you said, he's probably setting himself up for a bigger payday, but yeah, things are on the up to me in San Jose. And then you got John Klingberg in here, like an actual power play one quarterback. As much as John Klingberg is like, not really that exciting. I mean, for any other team besides San Jose, now he's on San Jose. You're like, oh, Klingberg could maybe get like 40 points, 45 points with, like 15 to 20 power play points. And that would be pretty nice, right? This is a guy that can run a power play. And William Eklund, I believe, is going to be on that power play.
All right, there you have it. Next up is John Klingberg. We mentioned him here. The real question here, though, 40 points, I think, is in the wheelhouse if he stays on the power play all year long. The real question is, does he get more minutes? He kind of impressed, I guess you could say, in Edmonton,
Wasn't
stepping
terrible.
into the playoffs and not getting absolutely destroyed. So there was something there with John Klingberg. So I mean, San Jose's depth chart on defense is probably the single worst one in the league. So if he is capable of playing more minutes, he will be given the opportunity to, especially if they are trying to bring on some of their younger guys, the Dickinsons, even Makema Doolan, who played last year. If they're trying to bring in Cagnoni, they're not going to throw these guys to the wolves with the top pair minutes, right? So it could be Klingberg, who they just kind of sacrifice on the
Yeah.
top pair, or at least the second pair.
Sacrifices plus minus.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I could see a situation in which Klingberg approaches 50 points if everything broke perfectly. I'm not gonna project it that way. I'm not gonna draft Klingberg, I don't think, anywhere unless it is like the last round and
Yeah.
that you have a good schedule week 1 or something like that. But it is something I am relatively interested in for fantasy purposes, just because this is the only situation where he might actually get 20 minutes a night. All right, keeping it moving. Buffalo re-signing Ryan McLeod had a really nice season last year. Kind of feel like it might have been one of the better seasons of his career when it's all said and done. Super efficient was Ryan McLeod there, but gets a nice little payday here. Alex Lyon getting signed in as a backup behind UPL. They can kind of share starts a bit, 1A, 1B. Devin Levi had a weird year. Not sure what Buffalo is really thinking about this guy's development at this point. Bringing in Lions suggests to me that they're at least baking in the possibility that Levi is not going to be ready to take on a significant role as one of their goaltenders in this next upcoming season. So I don't know. I don't think either of these guys are anything more than potential names to keep in the back of your mind. This is where this guy's at, and we might want to think about him at some point throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, McLeod is a guy that I'll definitely be keeping my eye on for sure. Like 22 points in the last 22 games. One of the things I really liked is the increase in ice time. This guy was getting like 20 minutes out there, right? So just the fact that he does that, it's simple stuff, but obviously he has the coach's confidence. They like what he's bringing to the table out there, and he contributed with 22 points in 22 games. So that's a guy that I think is going to be kind of like a premium stream if you're looking at Buffalo. I think that's sort of where he's at. And then we'll just have to see what happens with Lyon and the goaltending situation there.
Over to Anaheim, Mikael Granlund, surprisingly enough, 3 years, $7 million to go to Anaheim. I guess he just liked California that much that he wanted to go back. It is kind of throwing this depth chart into another tough to parse situation once
Yep.
again. So let's just look across here. You got Cutter Gauthier, Chris Kreider, Frank Vetrano probably on the left side here. Now you've got Leo Carlson, Mason McTavish, Ryan Strome down the middle, and Granlund, Terry Killorn on the right side. Is that what we're going with?
I mean, because Granlund can play center as well. So it's just like who's going to get the bump here? And yeah, we'll have to see what Joel Quenneville does. This team is really tough. Nate and I were just talking about this the other day. We're starting our projections pretty soon here, and Anaheim is the first team that we're doing. And it stinks to start with Anaheim because we got a new coach. We got a bunch of new players in here. Like, what the hell? I mean, good luck to us all, but yeah, I think it's a net positive to bring a guy like Granlund in here to Anaheim. I like what they're doing. They're bringing veteran guys in to sort of supplement these young players and sort of teach them how to play. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like Granny is probably going to be like a middle sixer. And maybe, if there's injuries, he moves up the lineup. This is a guy that can obviously play top line minutes, power play. He did that in San Jose and did it really, really well, right? So I still feel that player is in there, but I feel like he's going to be more of a supplementary piece in Anaheim.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think that he can be pretty solid given the right situation. I'm not sure this is the right
No, it's a
situation
weird
is the
one.
tough part. Yeah, it is a weird spot. He kind of fits the mold of some of the other players they have. Like he's a bit more Troy Terry in that regard in my mind. He's not an obvious fit in this lineup, in my opinion. So that's the part that is going to be really hard to figure out. And again, it feels like the median outcome here is for all these guys to get 17 minutes and nobody to really assert themselves, which
Right.
would really suck for fantasy purposes. Yeah, something that I'll have to think a lot more about. Hopefully, we get to fantasy draft season and we've got a lot more info on who Joel Quenneville's talking about, who he's playing on lines together, what the power play looks like, etc. Other deals that did happen: Nate Schmidt, Brandon Tanev both go to Utah, Vladimir Tarasenko to Minnesota, Connor Brown, Jake Allen, Evgeny Dadonov go to New Jersey, Cody Ceci and Brian Dumoulin to LA, as we mentioned. Philip Khrushchev goes to San Jose. Any of these move the needle whatsoever for you in fantasy, Blake?
Um, I like Philip Kurashev to San Jose. I think there's potential there. Obviously, Bedard had his best season of the two when he was flanking Philip Kurashev, right? But Kurashev had some defensive shortcomings that really got exacerbated last season, and he ended up getting benched, right? Riding Pine. But I do like Kurashev. I think that's just a player I'm interested in watching to see what happens there. I'm not drafting him. Tarasenko as well. I think we have to be just a little bit wary that he's there, right? Because he's probably earmarked for the third line at this point, right? Because we got Matt Zuccarello and Matt Boldy on the right side there, but it's an offensive player. Obviously, like you know, is he friends with Cap? I don't know the situation there, but they got the Russian connection. Tarasenko's a guy who could jump on power play one if need be as well, if they want to shuffle things up. And it's a guy that's done things in the past. So yeah, again, just a streamer that I'm looking at for Minnesota. It just adds to their offensive depth.
I could see that. The one that I'm kind of earmarking just a little bit is Evgeny Dadonov to New Jersey, just because they have tried some really horrific players in that top six in New Jersey
Yeah.
over the past year. And Dadonov is one guy who I think could at least get hot for a stretch and have a stretch of relevance for fantasy purposes. Minnesota, Tarasenko, that's a cry for help in my estimation. Uh, I think they were super into Brock Besser. I think they were super into trading Marco Rossi and taking a huge swing on somebody else, and none of that came to fruition for them. So I think they're on to like plan C at this point, and that's a tough look for Minnesota here. Yeah, maybe they'll find something else to get done, but I'm not a huge fan there. So who's left? Obviously Nikolai Ehlers, as of our recording right here, 10 p.m. on July 1st. He has not signed. We did hear earlier today that this is the most likely outcome, that he was just gonna, kind of sit there as the belle of the ball and take his time and make people up their offers and up their offers and up their offers until he got the absolute most money possible and then make his decision. What I have seen, Emily Kaplan reporting the Canes, as you mentioned, Blake, but also the Washington Capitals and Tampa Bay Lightning are among the teams in
Oh
on
my.
Nikolai Ehlers. Yeah, any of those would be relatively exciting. I would be worried about Rod Brind'Amour with Nikolai Ehlers. That could be just another situation where he gets 16 minutes a night and he's super efficient in those minutes, but it's not happy for fantasy managers. Again, Washington would actually be kind of cool. I could see that one working out in some situations, especially if he does get the true power play one time. And obviously, the Lightning, they've got some talent there. I could see that working in a variety of different setups. So that one would be exciting to me as well. I mean, I'd still take him on the Leafs if he wants to come this way. I don't know about that, but a man can dream,
Come
is what I'll
west,
say there.
Ehlers. Come west. All right, come on.
Bowen Byram, I have here as number two. It seems like there is still a lot of steam around Bowen Byram. Trade talk. Also, some offer sheet talk. I think it was Pierre Lebrun was talking about that one team was at least contemplating an offer sheet situation for Bowen Byram. So I do think the most likely scenario is that he does get moved. I don't know where he'd go exactly. Like maybe if he goes to San Jose, then you could get excited about him potentially running a top power play in
Yep.
San Jose. There's not a lot of situations where I think Bowen Byram immediately becomes a huge player of interest for fantasy purposes. He's kind of stagnated, quite honestly. He had a lot of interesting metrics, interesting underlying stuff early on, but I think most of the NHL and obviously the Sabres as well have kind of soured a little bit on the player overall, but definitely going to be a player with upside that a lot of teams will still have some interest in acquiring. Pia Suter, Dmitry Orlov, Brent Burns, Jack Roslovic, Matt Grzelcyk, Victor Olofsson, Gustav Nyquist, Jeff Skinner. Obviously, nothing tremendously exciting here, but do you think there's any scenarios or situations where you could see yourself getting excited about a landing spot for one of these players?
Eh, no, not really. Maybe Victor Olofsson. I mean, he's a great shooter, but it's going to take a perfect situation there. Bowen Byram, like you mentioned, obviously, if he can get somewhere where he's not behind a couple guys in the pecking order, that's sort of been the story of his career so far. So, yeah, I mean, I like those players. Jack Roslovic as well. That's a player the Canucks were in on a little bit, but I don't know. This is slim pickings. This is what we call the bottom of the barrel, folks.
Definitely is. Yeah, I mean, could Jeff Skinner now go to Minnesota and have like a second line role and play on a Matt Boldy, Marco Rossi line and provide some streamer relevance? That's about as exciting as it gets
Okay,
at
all
this
right.
point, I think.
I'll get on that. That sounds nice.
All right. Well, Blake, I think we've
We
done
did
it.
it.
We made it to the end of this mega beefer episode. If you're still here with us, you should definitely click the link in the
Clink it.
description.
Clink the link.
Join the Discord community. Come talk about all these deals. Tell us your fantasy takes on every one of them. We would love to break it down even more. Perhaps you got some takes that we haven't heard yet that we should consider. So if you could do that, we would appreciate that. You could also like, rate, review, subscribe, comment. Whatever you can do, it really does help us out. But that is going to be all that we've got for this episode. Hopefully, it brought you some value, helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard today came from Natural Stat Trick, terrific free resource. All the micro stats you heard today came from All Three Zones, terrific paid resource. Many thanks to the band they're there for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.